AhRelevant should be joining, and then I guess we'll do introductions after that. Oh wait, Wired, are you gonna join me in the beanie gang?
I do have my beanie on. Wait, can we? We're in your general chat though, so we can't turn on our webcams, can we?
There's a link in Voice. A Discord link in Voice.
Uh-oh.
Alright.
Where's? I'm so sorry. I'm a boomer.
Run
me through the step-by-step process.
Right above the voice channel. The text channel that is right above the voice channel.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry, what do I do here?
Click on the link.
Yeah. Oh shit! What the fuck? How did this even? That's so crazy.
Ta-da!
Oh, nice, dude.
Oh,
your cams are like.
That's a sick effect.
It's not like that. It's gonna fix itself. I promise. It's getting kind of old. I'm gonna need an upgrade soon. It always says this when I first start something.
Oh wait, now I have 2 webcams. Just
7 levels of webcam. I'm ready.
Why? Jesus Christ. Okay. I don't know if that was extremely loud for anyone else.
Is that your phone turn on?
My the follower notification just went off, and it was dear. Oh, that was loud. And I don't know how to fix it either. Nice.
No.
I'm like getting scared.
Veganism bring a protected class. All right. We're starting off hot. I like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sounds interesting.
Is that gonna be AVAB, brothers?
AVAB.
This is gonna. People are gonna start hating vegans.
Well, they might not be able to.
Yeah, good point.
Well, I guess it's good point. They'll find covert ways, right? Like they've been doing with blacks right now, right?
Start making some dog whistles to veganism.
Yeah. You want to hate black people in the United States? You don't say. I mean, who? Barry Goldwater or the person that was Barry Goldwater's political advisor? You can't just say it overtly. You gotta start talking about other shit like smaller government and lowering taxes and shit.
Start calling you a grass chewer or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say yeah. Or you can just start talking about how like raising the prices on plants, you know, making meat more cheap, that kind of shit. This is cute as fuck. I gotta read through this fucking case. God damn it. Here, give me a sec.
It's only there for context. I'm sure you don't have to read the whole thing.
I have to digest this. I gotta know what angle we're coming at here from. You know?
Okay. Uh-oh.
You guys watching AGDQ?
Is that on?
No.
Yeah?
I didn't know that was on.
It's on now. This first day.
Ah. That's why I didn't know it was open.
Yeah.
I dig this. This is actually really cute. The way that I feel like the judge was making a targeted attack at religious people. I'm not sure. Because nobody likes vegans, right? The judge rule is about the ethical vegan should be considered to similar legal protections in British workplaces as those who hold religious beliefs. Is this person a Jainist? I want Jane. No? Because Jains, I think, are like by default vegan. So maybe that's what they were doing. But nope, this
There
person
we
gets
go.
it. It's like, I'm an ethical vegan. That's my philosophical belief. So I should be protected by law.
If I have a philosophical belief to kill all black people, does that mean it's protected by law?
No.
I'd hope not.
No.
I guess you could take some weird argument where it's like, man, to what extent are we going to start recognizing philosophical beliefs as tantamount to religious protections? No, but I would love it. I mean, not if we went
That's
to
the
full
discussion.
Dude.
Yeah.
wait,
I don't
that-
want us to go the. Sorry, am I
That's it,
spoiling
though.
the topic? Yeah, I'm probably spoiling the topic.
Ah.
This is fucking crazy. Analysis for reaching effects.
Why can't I?
Simon, do you know how to do this? How to
What are you
change
trying to
the
do?
or does anyone don't know how to change the volume of the alert box or like the alert sounds in
Oh, no.
Streamlabs OBS?
Yeah. You would just you would go into it and click properties on whatever it is. And there's a slider under whichever alert. So you have alerts for like
shit.
subscriptions and followers. And then if you open those up, there's a little slider for the volume.
Oh. Wait. Is there?
Well, it was on mine.
Alert settings. No. Oh, there's volume. Let's just turn. All these. Okay. Do you guys want to wait for AhRelevant or just go ahead and start on the topics?
I think he's joining. now.
I'm fine with
I'd
that.
like to wait, but I don't know how long he's going to be.
Yeah, I like really.
All right.
What about him?
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Oh, there he is.
Ta-da.
All right, give me a second.
All right.
I don't even know what the hell. I don't like. I have not used this for actual stuff in a while. I don't even know how to activate my under these circumstances. How to activate my camera if there's a button. I know how to use.
If you have streamer mode enabled and you have the little pop-up on the top, you can't. You have to click that pop-up,
Easy.
like the X on it, and then you can do it.
Yeah.
All right,
Hell yeah.
right on.
All right. So I guess we'll start with intros. Irrelevant, you go first.
Hell yeah! All right. My name is like my mic is good, right?
Yep.
All right, sweet. My name is AhRelevant. Twitch.tv/AhRelevant. There's I think there's a little bit of an maybe that's just me, but Twitch.tv/ I talk a lot about politics. Sometimes I touch on philosophy, but I mainly do React Andy bullshit. Watch some Jubilee videos. You know how it is, because you can't always do politics, but looking like we might go into World War III, so it's a pretty good time for politics. Trying to scheme on them, you know how it is. But yeah, go over there if you want to drop me a follow.
Oh, yeah. All right, Wired.
Everything you said was profoundly true. I'm WiredGuitars. I don't really know how to top that. I just do politics, I guess, with the lefty edge, and I got the philosophy shit too that I do quite often. It's like it's a synthesis, right? You can't really escape it. Politics and philosophy are one and the same. So,
True.
yeah, Twitch.tv/WiredGuitar with no S.
All right, Brento.
Hey everybody. I'm BrentoBox on Twitch, and I do politics and philosophy, I guess, just like everybody here, and hop on other people's channels to do roundtables as often as I can. That's it.
Oh, sorry, that wasn't a reaction to you. That was my
No.
Streamlabs. All right, Simon.
Hi, I'm Simon, all the fusions. I'm a viewer that made it into a call, I guess, with some interesting people, I guess. That's where I am. I like philosophy, and that's why I'm here, so.
All right, buddy. I'm Synth. I do the Philosophy podcast. This is kind of a scuffed version because we haven't really done one in a little while. The holidays kind of got the better of me. But we're doing another one on Thursday as well, and then it'll be every week after that, every Thursday at 10 p.m. EST. So that's kind of what we do for this podcast. I'm mainly like a philosophy politics streamer. I play video games as well. So that's me. And jump right into the topics.
Start with the last one.
I mean, we could start with the last one. Yeah, sure, why not?
It's like called reverse.
I mean, we were kind of. Who is the worst philosopher?
Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand, instantly and like decisively. No doubt about that. It's Ayn Rand. Just objectively. I mean, objectivismly, you could even say, if you want to get really stupid and not at all any way, shape, or form pretentious. Yeah. But then I think the way you posit the question. In the format is pretty good. Like, because it's a difficult question. As the worst philosopher is liable to be considered not a true philosopher at all.
Right. Yeah.
True.
We don't know who that is because they're irrelevant. You know.
Yeah.
I would go as far as to say that like you can be known for how profoundly stupid and like how tautologically seeming not seeming like how aggrandizing you can be about your oneself, but not realize like how tautological all of your arguments are, which is I'd say like Ayn Rand in a nutshell. Having, by the way, precursor, like I've never read any of her work outside of like quote mining, but I still feel like I feel like it's fair to paint her in this poor of a light because of how much she's inspired the West in an objectively terrible way.
To be honest, I didn't even know Ayn Rand was a philosopher. I thought they were just a failed economist.
She's an author. I don't even think she's technically an economist, but
well, I mean, I guess in influencing the economy in a fucking dumb way.
Yeah, in a really dumb way. It's crazy how many people whose are very influential is like lives that she's affected. I think Paul Ryan, fucking dude from Mitch McConnell's state, Kentucky, right? Was saying like her work needs to be taught in schools, and I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, this is just embarrassing.
But you haven't read her work.
Fair enough. Again, fair enough.
I'm just saying, you haven't read it.
I get the feeling Brento's like got Fountain of Dreams or whatever the fuck under his bedside, and he's moving on to Atlas
Fountain Pen or the
Fountain. Oh shit!
The Fountainhead or some shit.
Yeah. I'll need to just have some time aside to read Atlas Shrugged. I've heard it's a good book. It's their magnum opus, right? But
it is. Yeah.
I'm sure you would know that, motherfucker.
I haven't read it. Everyone knows that.
Yeah, I know. I've read a plot summary. It's a bunch of railroad guys that are part of a union that they don't want to be, which is already ass backwards because the railroad industry is like one of the most prominent and still existing unions in current day. So it makes no sense that in a futuristic dystopian society that the railroad workers would be the first to detract from the unions. I don't know, in my opinion. And secondly, that like all of her characters are like incredibly one-dimensional. She draws characters as though they're either like staunchly masculine with zero feminine traits or like passively feminist with like they can't even pass the what's the fucking test, the Bell-Schultz test? You know what I'm talking about, right? The female character can't even like she's just a horrible writer. Definitely a horrible author, in my opinion, as somebody who's never read her work. Technically,
Like, come on, dude.
I know. Above
Worst
all
author
else,
I've never read. Like, okay.
fair enough. Above all else, I'll stand by that claim, motherfucker.
Sure,
above all
fine.
else,
I don't know. I just think it's funny. Like,
it is.
I mean, like, you're going in so hard, but you never read it.
Right.
Like,
I know,
I mean,
but
come on,
objectively, an objectively bad philosopher. Objectively bad. I will argue that to the death.
Okay.
I've read over objectivism. It's terrible. You're terrible if you think it's good. We can talk about it, but yeah.
Hot take.
Yeah.
Damn.
Anybody else? I'm down.
I mean, I'd have to agree if we count. Like I said, I didn't even know. Like, yeah, sure, I'd have to agree. Like, when it comes to a body of work that I've read, like, I mean, you'll find like no answers here. I'm mainly just a fucking armchair fucking cuck, but like, it's
we all are.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, like, yeah, no, I mean, if we count Ayn Rand, I don't know who you would even count as a philosopher. Really, that I would throw in there before her, or I guess above her in this ranking, but
yeah. I'm just gonna throw Murray Rothbard up there, but I don't know. I feel like Ayn Rand's just I mean, they've actually had conversation. Ayn Rand and Murray Rothbard had a really weird past where they were friends and then they became enemies, and then they became friends again for a brief period of time when she published her work, but then he started to hate her again. So they had a really weird like friendship-esque thing. But I'm pretty convinced Murray Rothbard hates women in general. So like, there's some telltale motive. I'm just throwing out a lot of shit. I don't know. Murray Rothbard's a terrible philosopher too, in the way that he views, I don't know, an ecclesiastic view of supply and demand to answer and account for everything. But he's more of an economist, so it's hard for me to call him a philosopher and shit on him for that reason. But I don't know.
There you go.
Yeah. I'll just say I don't have a take on who's the worst philosopher. I don't know. I'm not sure. I've never like. No, it's dumb. I can't think of it. Maybe it'll pop up.
Yeah. It'll be me in a few days, right?
Yeah, I so. Work at it. You gotta earn that.
On nobody. That's fair. I do gotta earn that title. Worst ones.
Honestly, I thought you would say something like Marx or something, to be honest.
I was waiting for that answer.
That was what comes to my head, but the thing is that I haven't read Marx either. So, like, you know.
Don't worry. Like, as far as the left is concerned, nobody's read Marx. I swear to God.
True.
Yeah.
An anarchist will say you haven't read, a communist hasn't read, or sorry, like a non-anarchist communist hasn't read Marx the right way or some shit
Sure.
like that.
Right. Yeah, you're right though, because that was in my head, and I was thinking, I was like, I guess I'd say Marx just because I disagree with like communism, but that's the only thing. I was like, I wouldn't make that, you know, like, oh, it's Marx. I haven't read him though. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be fair here. Like, as a Marxist, right? I don't feel like enough people really know what Marxist communism is. I even call it that just to make the distinction between like authoritarian communism. It's like most people, I feel like, criticize Marx and communism by extension don't really like, they don't characterize what Marx wrote about. And especially like his tales of the withering of the state and having like envisioning a classless, moneyless, stateless society. So, but I don't know.
Well, yeah, I imagine there's some truth to that. Yeah.
well, it sounds like he's envisioning a society without conflict, and it's like, okay, that's great, but conflict does exist. So now what?
Yeah. Well, there's like layers to how he gets there. I don't know. Like, I'm obviously being very charitable to Marx and very uncharitable to Ayn Rand as somebody who has. And
Sure.
I'll bite the bullet here on the foreshadowing. Like, I've read Marx. You know, I haven't actually read Marx the right way, but like I have actually read Marx. I don't know, I feel
What
like
is the right way to read Marx? What's everyone else getting wrong that you know is right?
With two eyes and an open mind.
And there you go.
I don't know how so many people get it wrong. Like, man, like maybe
What do they
there's-
get wrong?
Wait, so blind people, you're just gatekeeping blind people.
Oh, yeah,
from
yeah.
understanding.
True.
I see how it is.
All right, you caught me. I listened to an audiobook, to be fair, so blind people can get in here too. You know, there's tons of ways to read Marx.
Hey,
Imagine
you don't even meet
actually
your own
reading
purity
books.
test. Damn.
No. Say what you will about Marx, whether you agree or disagree with him, you got to give him credit for this, right? He's influenced an entire field of academia. Like, the entirety of sociology would not be the same without his analysis. And now, again, you could technically give Ayn Rand the same foothold. She's influenced American politics quite a bit, but I mean, it just so happens, I guess, that all the politicians that she's influenced are like dumb shits, in my opinion. We're gonna disagree on that.
Right? It's because she's a capitalist.
Nice.
It's not just that. I promise you, it's not just again, there's so many things you can dislike about Paul Ryan outside of his Paul Ryan, I think, talked about Ayn Rand, but also he said that she's brilliant. So, or Ron Paul, and then his dad or his son rather, fucking Rand Paul. They're all of that Ayn Rand school of thought. So it's just dumb as shit. I don't know. Libertarian economy.
I don't know. I think I also like ran into it where like even like the worst philosophers, if we're just talking about like people who are actual philosophers and things that we think are bad ideas, then like most of them have like a few good ideas like mixed in. So like they can't be the worst, right? But like I don't know. Like even if I go to, because like Descartes is my go-to for like worst philosopher, to be honest. It's like but like he introduced like the ultimate skepticism or whatever the fuck.
Radical
like
skeptic.
I mean like he was like a very large contributor to like a lot of things. And like even though I don't like some of his arguments, like a lot of his stuff helped, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a lot like that with a lot of philosophers.
I want to go this far. You could even go a step further and say Descartes kind of had I guess you could say like all the obstacles pegged against him, because at the time he was gripping with like the church coming down like hard on any beliefs that he espoused that weren't like, you know, devout faith in God. I'm not going to sit here and say that Descartes was actually like a skeptic in disguise, because I think he probably did actually believe in God, but that a lot of his work probably would have been censored if he didn't publish it posthumously and or humously.
Yeah, humously.
Yeah, humously. And then also he like probably necessarily needed to include a lot of his like God arguments for it to even go get a grain of salt that was worth anything over the first like 100 years since his death. So
Yeah, I don't know.
Not to defend him too much though. He's certainly some criticisms. His duality, mind-body experience and shit.
Yeah, that's actually
Yeah.
it was that was one of his interesting reads, actually. I found that to be very interesting.
Interesting, but I don't know how much I agree with it.
Yeah.
What's his take on it? What's he say?
He says that the mind and the body are distinct and separable, and there's like a relationship between mind and matter, or subjects and objects, and it's contrasted with other positions like physicalism. I'm just reading off the fucking wiki here. It's really weird. Yeah. I'll be honest. Yeah.
I think from what I remember from my class, he was more of thinking of like the body as like a vessel and the mind as like the pilot of the vessel, right? That like that's what it really is. So like if you had a mind by itself, then it could still pilot a vessel, maybe not even like the one that it's in. Like that could necessarily come from it. Like I don't know. That was kind of maybe not his exact thing, but yeah.
Sure. That's sort of like just the idea of a soul.
Yeah.
Well, kind of.
He references a soul a lot throughout his work.
Okay. So then maybe that's his representation of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird chimp for me, to be honest. Well, I mean, it also kind of depends on how you interpret the mind as being separate, because, like, obviously, right, our mind, if, you know, technology was there, could be used to actually, you know, operate different kinds of, like, machinery, or I guess, like, a robo body, if it was actually there. But other than that, like, I haven't read the person. I'm sure it's not like referring to specifically that, right?
Yeah.
Like the scientific argument.
I'll give it, you know,
yeah.
I'll throw him a bone. It's abstract, right? Like that's cool. Like, you know, you're getting pretty estranged. You're getting pretty out there in terms of like what most people think of, but at least it's like abstract as fuck, you know, like this isn't just like, oh yeah, man, I think the mind is really smart and everything comes from that. Like what probably most of us think. Like he's trying to kind of suggest that maybe there's like some experience that extends from the mind that could be out of body, or there's some shit. I don't even fully understand it, but like I can respect it for that. And maybe I shouldn't criticize it so heavily. I don't. Again, like my biggest criticisms of him are not even really of him as much as the time period he was in.
Yeah, like so for instance, I haven't like read Das Kapital of like for Marx or whatever, but I'm obviously not a socialist or a communist or anything like that. But, you know, I can recognize that, I can recognize some of the good critiques, to just hark back on what Synth was referring to. Like, it's really hard to find like a philosopher that didn't say one thing that was like usable. You know what I'm saying? Like at the very least in some capacity usable, like an argument or something like that, because like, I mean, probably wouldn't be a philosopher at that point.
I was gonna say, yeah, we probably wouldn't have heard of them if they're not really coming up with new shit to think about. So I agree.
True. All right, so Micro joined. If you want to introduce yourself.
Oh, hey. I go by MicroMacro TX on Twitch. I talk about left-wing stuff typically. Play some video games sometimes. I like to make fun of right-wingers that say stupid shit, and I like doing high energy stuff. And I like talking to chat. Liked engaging with chat. I don't know. It's fun. That's what I do, and I kind of understand the general ideas of a lot of. Basically, I'm like a philosophy noob, and that I kind of understand basic ideas and basic tenets of different ideas. Like, I can't even get sentences straight right now, apparently. But
Foundations?
Yeah, foundations. There you go. I'm here more to learn and to hopefully chip in if I can. But we're here to learn and maybe represent the people in chat that don't really know what they're talking about, but might have some sort of basic understanding.
Okay.
Forgot to do that. There we go.
How we all doing? What have we been talking about?
Guys.
Worst philosopher.
Worst philosopher. Yeah.
Oh, Jaden Smith.
Holy shit. You know what?
God answer.
He comes with the hot take. Oh, that's so good.
That's a good meme.
Jaden Smith.
Oh. I don't.
God damn it.
Nah. He doesn't get the philosopher tag, man. He doesn't come up with shit.
If Kanye makes this book, does Kanye get the tag?
Oh no.
What is one new idea that Kanye has produced into like any?
We don't know yet.
Well, we won't know.
Yeezys.
Well,
Yeah, Yeezy.
if we're gonna sit here and say black people should have unshackled themselves through slavery, trust me, we've had those before.
That was a fucking weird ass time for Kanye.
Yeah, it was, dude.
That was
Very bizarre art.
Getting tomatoed at shows, and like he was hanging from fucking cliffs because people weren't really keen on him as a person. I don't know, it was fucking crazy.
It's Kanye being Kanye, dude.
He's gotten back on his SSRIs. I think he's doing all right.
Oh, has he?
I think so. I heard that he started getting. He's got like bipolar and like 5 other different shit that you can find in the DSM-5. I'm pretty sure, and I'm not saying this to like demonize him in any way. It's a psychology major, by the way, right? Like he's generally posted like several Twitter posts saying I was hijacked by the right wing and I didn't realize what I was doing. I'm sorry to anybody and fans that I've disappointed. I'm going to stick to making music. He's made these posts like.
It's pretty common for like I shouldn't say successful, but it's pretty common for kind of like artistic people like that view the world differently to have some sort of like not mental disorder, but to have like some sort of mental difference, I guess, isn't it? Or am I just completely making that up?
So here's the big meme, right? And I learned this in fucking the psychology of diseases. As weird of a class as that may sound, it is the norm for you to have some mental abstraction. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you see what I'm getting at? Everybody has some variation. Not everybody. Most people have either ADHD or are on the spectrum somewhere, or any other, like you can get into the more abstract, like some like classification of schizophrenia is very, very not normal, or I guess you could say like heterodox to find somebody who is, I guess, completely well adjusted, has like no forms of mental abstraction in any kind.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, take that for what it's worth.
But that kind of appeals to this concept that there's a perfect mental health.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying here is that like
right. So what is a perfect mental health?
One that I guess does not have any of these classifications.
No. I mean, like it's got to have like it's like because each classification has to be like, okay, well, you have this. It's essentially it's like every different classification is saying there's some sort of a deficit, right? So is there anyone with no deficit mentally?
I don't know if I agree with the deficit bit.
I'm wondering, like,
yeah, I don't agree.
I'm not sure I entirely understand what you're saying, Brento. Could you?
Okay, well, I don't know. It's like I guess sort of what I guess I feel like there's like this implicit, not like just by saying that, hey, everyone has some kind of a mental condition, I guess, to some sort of degree, right? It's like, okay, but then you could say like, well, then they have some kind of mental condition that others don't have. That sort of appeals to this idea of like a perfect mental condition. So what is the perfect mental condition?
I'm really trying to grip this. So ASD is a spectrum, but you could also not be on the spectrum. You do acknowledge that, right?
What is ASD? I don't know what that is.
Is autism spectrum disorder.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you could have a very, I think they call it like mild form of autism, right? Or you could have a very extreme form, what we used to call Asperger's.
Right.
Like, yeah, afflictive.
Well, Asperger's used to be the mild form. The extreme form is like Rain Man, like counting toothpicks and stuff like that.
Do you know what? Rain Man isn't like a condition. Isn't on.
This is Rain Man's just
we're getting a little bit on.
But I mean,
well, I was gonna say
no, but he was autistic.
Yeah. Well, he definitely was. Yeah. You could. My point was just that you could also not be on the spectrum of ASD. You know.
Yeah, but that would mean that you're not suffering from any form of autism at all.
Yes.
Right. Right. Correct. And that would
so they would. Yeah, so they would not be suffering from any of the mental diseases we currently know. Then we would probably make up some new shit that they're suffering, or like some weird. I don't know.
Real quick,
like I feel like it just infinitely goes.
This is gonna sound really cringy, but we probably shouldn't say suffering.
No.
Yeah, suffer, right? And it's not suffering necessarily.
I was gonna say plenty of people have ASD and they don't realize that they're suffering. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Not suffering.
It is possible to be born. If what you're asking, Brento, is like, is it possible? Yeah, is it possible to be born without ASD, without any trace, I guess you could say, of like ADHD or OCD or especially like schizophrenia or then yes,
even the words like ADHD and OCD, the D stands for disorder. So like, okay, so there's like this disorder is implied. It's in the name, right? So then it's like, is there such a thing as a perfectly ordered mind?
Yeah. I think I like
a mind with zero disorder.
Does it have to be perfect?
I want to be clear.
It's perfect by the concept of perfect. If you have zero disorder, then you're perfectly ordered. In a sense.
I like where your headspace is at. I just don't know if this really applies to like known and like observable scientific pathogens. You know, like
sure, but that's my question. I'm asking.
Yeah. And well, I'm answering that like it is uncommon, but yes, there are people that just generally have, and I'm gonna say this word. I don't mean this like to trigger, but like that genuinely have like no mental afflictions. You know,
sure.
Like it is possible to find somebody without that is not on the
not me.
Not on ASD or not on the autism spectrum.
Not on this podcast.
Not on this
podcast. Yeah. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel sorry. I feel like I derailed that there.
Yeah. I feel like
but it is definitely uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And even insofar as that goes, like many of the ways that we have been, especially recording, I know ASD and ADHD have like evolved over the last few decades. And a lot of people think like ADHD is on the rise. It actually just turns out that like our ways of being able to identify it have gotten better, or I could improved is probably a better word for it. That like this foe of I don't want to say like no mental health is on the rise whatsoever, because certainly we've seen a huge spike in MDD recently. But
what's MDD?
A major depressive disorder. Like it's often called. You could call it depression. Yeah. But either way, yeah. Like there are certain mental. Again, I hate to use the word afflictions or pathogens. Mental disorders even kind of sounds cringy, but like there are certainly. Yeah, there are. Well, I just want
condition is always
there are mental conditions that have certainly been on the rise over the past, especially decade or to 15 years. Again, like MDD, but other disorders like ADHD. It just turns out like we've gotten a lot better at being able to recognize the signs of that earlier on. And this faux like I remember, I hate to like brand the token conservative here, but I was talking to somebody a while recently. They were saying like, man, like we've seen it. Like these liberals are they're infecting our scientific fields, and they're just like classifying everybody with ADHD and ADD and trying to say everybody's got a disease and we need to just give them pills to solve it. And it's like, dude, this is not even remotely true. We've just gotten way better at studying and being able to recognize when people have these disorders, and our abilities to treat them have improved significantly, such that these people don't need to walk around for the first 15 years of their life wondering why they can't sit still or pay attention in class.
Sure. But I mean, you could not to be like, hey, this person. No, but it's like, I mean, you do recognize like also within a field, like as like these classifications grow, like you can they will also expand and like cover more and more, right?
More
like I mean, like it's like you can. It's very easy for a field of classifications and to just kind of like keep expanding and pulling in new things and creating new definitions and being like, and this is like this and this, and that can grow as well.
I see what you're saying now. Yeah, I finally get. I do like where your headspace is at. I'm curious.
Right.
Though, is your aim now to like maybe put out or posit like a very slight cautionary tale for like eventually everybody will be classified as something? Is that kind of
correct?
Like,
yeah. Well, that's not my aim. That's kind of like what I'm just acknowledging the fact that like when you create a category, the category will like expand, and so will like, or maybe like it will deepen.
This is well,
it can expand.
Yeah, this
right?
is.
Yeah, like
our
category of rock hasn't really expanded too much, right? We've pretty much nailed down what a rock is and what isn't a rock, right? But I see what you're saying. Like when something as vague as like, well, no, sure. But he has a point. When you're trying to define something as vague as the state or condition of the mind, that is a very loose category that absolutely, especially through rigorous scientific research, could expand or even detract. Or contract rather over time. So I do agree with you to some extent. I don't know. I don't know if your angle here is to be like the lefties are really invading academia.
Okay, Tell the truth. Just how it is. Yeah.
It's just, some people like to say
you're like, hey. It's like
exactly. I just don't. I hope that you don't see this as like a necessarily a malevolent thing, because it certainly could be helpful, as it has been for a lot of.
I don't think it's. Oh, go ahead. But I was going to say no. I don't think it's malevolent at all. I just think it's potential. I think it's something that happens, and so you have to be aware of the potential for it. You know.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of agree.
But at the same time too, like, couldn't it be possible that, like, because you're saying that we could expand this to where everyone has some sort of like something, couldn't it be possible that in reality everyone, like Wired was saying earlier, that it's more normal for somebody to have some sort of
disorderly mind,
uniqueness about their mind than it is for them not to?
Yeah, of course.
So I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's not necessarily like wrong to come to these conclusions either.
To be fair, he was never trying to say that it was wrong.
Yeah. No,
I was saying
I'm trying to clarify this, like, for myself more than anything. Like I said, I'm here. You guys know way more about this shit than I do. I'm here to try to learn and to get on your level.
Well, right now we're not even talking about philosophy earlier. We're talking about mental. Well, they're immutably linked. Right?
True.
I don't know, but it's also an interesting concept of like, do we actually have like infinite, like different, not disorders, but like conditions of the mind, or are we actually finite? Like, are there actually just a finite amount of ways that our neurons can go, or like, are we actually just that complex that like we'll just keep creating categories forever? I don't know.
I'm curious though, is something like ADHD as easy to pin down, or is it possible to reduce something like ADHD down to just how the neurons within the brain work, or is it a little bit
I'm not sure.
Because a lot of it has to do with behavior and like how we understand social interactions, right? Yeah. So a lot of it really comes down to, So I don't think you could really just say like, well, their neurons are firing differently.
Maybe not the neurons, but like, I don't know, if we could have some sort of tautological view of it, like, would we ever run out of classifications? Would be the question.
No, we'd never run out of classifications. We would just make them. We just keep making them.
Again, Brento, I can't help but feel like you're saying that with a bit of a negative like line. Just keep making, like, I feel like
it's the truth though. But it's the truth. Like, there's potentially you could never run out of classifications. Like, you could. In fact, it was one of the topics. I don't know if we want to go into it, but it was the concept of like infinity, and does infinity exist, and can you demonstrate that infinity exists? That was one of the topics of the very long topic list today, which were all very good, but there's quite a lot of them. And it's like I just think that's the truth. I don't think that you could ever run out of a set of categories that you could create around like the perception of other people's mental states or anything really.
The perception of them, maybe, but like, I don't know. And like, when we're talking about like finite like beings, like I couldn't imagine not being able to like, I feel like you would just categorize like orders of operations, like how we do things, rather than, like, for instance, like a computer, you would categorize the variables or the functions of the computer rather than like every aspect of what the result could be or something like that.
Sure.
So instead which is necessarily finite, I believe is finite, are the amount of functions that we have as human beings. Like, I don't think that we can come up with like new strains of logic or something that we can all of a sudden, start abiding by. So you could just categorize these functions and how they interact with like certain stimuli.
Well, I agree that I think that there might be a limit on the different ways that human beings could function, but I don't think there's a limit on the way that we could categorize it. I think the categories could expand infinitely. They would even be redundant to a certain point, but they would just keep producing.
Sure.
I guess I'm just kind of failing to understand like what the concern about like having different categories is, or like what the negative, like the downside is.
Well, again, I'm starting to believe it more, but I think Brento's really trying to sell us that like he's not saying this with a negative.
No, well, I'm not saying with a negative. I'm not like, I don't even know what like the negative necessarily would be, except to say that.
Well,
I guess I would say that not all categories would be useful.
I'll give you this is the conservative argument I've heard, is that eventually the liberals that own the we'll say that own academia will find a way to classify conservatism as a mental health disorder, and that like.
Well, sure. I know people that say that. Yeah.
Maybe it's because maybe it's just have a left-wing
sure.
bias, but wouldn't it be the conservative people that have been categorizing things like homosexuality, like being transgender? Aren't they the ones that have categorized these things as mental disorders? Yeah. I guess I can't really say it has been conservatives, because if you look back in history, like people in the 50s would pretty much all be considered conservative by today's standpoints. And that was like where the first literature was coming out of. They would have categorized all of this like gender or sexual like minorities. They would have considered them all like a mental handicap at some point. So I guess I couldn't really say conservatives. The ones today that are doing it though seem to be overwhelmingly conservative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
True. Yeah. Agreed.
All right, everyone. I gotta dip out. I only had a little bit to run through today, but listen, if there's ever another one, I'll be sure to schedule a little bit more time to be able to run it down. But sorry, I have to leave so early. Y'all have a good one though. All right, it was good being on here. Twitch.tv/AhRelevant, and listen, love you all. All right,
have a good one.
Yeah, love you too, buddy.
See you,
Good
dude.
talking to you.
Yo, fuck AhRelevant.
Now he fucked up. Now he fucked up my fucking stream layout. Well.
Get Rem in here. We're all good, right? We'll fix.
Oh yeah.
Just fucking.
I'll message him about Thursday, but
nice. Fuck. We can have some metaphysical anti-realism conversation.
Oh no.
I don't know what that means.
We could run it down real quick.
My opinion is keep it that way, Micro. Don't put yourself in this hellhole.
Yeah,
it's a long conversation with no use out of the end of it.
Is what it means.
Yeah, I will say, if there's ever a vacuous conversation, that's probably it. Like,
True.
I don't really. I generally try not to say philosophy is like a waste of time, but damn, dude, metaphysics and metaethics are two, and epistemology are three, I guess, categories of philosophy that like you gotta get the layman's out. You know.
Really, you don't like epistemology?
I love epistemology. I just think that like for a philosophy layman or for like a philosophy noob, I think it's a dangerous territory to start in.
Why is that?
Because so the first thing you learn about epistemology is you shouldn't actually like ever know anything or like trust any like sources of knowledge. There's like so many different ways to account for like how we can claim knowledge or like make knowledge statements, rather I should say knowledge statements for like epistemology, statements for ethics, that it's like it's difficult to parse anything together. And I feel like for a noob or for like a layman, they're just going to come into this thinking, wait, do I know anything? Does anything exist?
Sure, yeah, but that's the beginning of philosophy. I guess I would almost say I feel like if epistemology is like the study, or now tell me if my definition is not accurate, right? But if epistemology is like the study or the search for truth, what is philosophy if not that? If not an extension of that?
It's the theory of knowledge. You gotta be very careful. There's like a
sure, yeah.
There's a difference between the two. But it's just so think about it this way, right? I'll throw you one. I'll throw you a bone here, okay? One of the studies, or one of the great thinkers of epistemology, or leading like epistemological thought, is David Hume. Okay, you probably heard of David Hume.
Mm-hmm.
David Hume came up with wrote several books. They're all poorly written, by the way, because philosophers are terrible authors. But
They're
David
awful
Hume,
at writing.
yeah. David Hume wrote a book. I think it's called The Problem of Induction. But even if it's not called The Problem of Induction, he discussed a lot this problem of induction. And it basically just tore apart the entirety of inductive reasoning, of inductive thought. Just to be clear, you know what inductive reasoning is. You know the difference between inductive versus deductive reasoning, right?
I don't.
Oh shit.
Okay.
Okay, so deductive. Let me try to do this. Deduct. So if I could say that I deduce something, it's basically saying there's enough evidence here that I can come to a conclusion, even if I don't know 100% for a fact that that is the truth, right? But inductive would be like, damn, I don't know actually.
Inferring.
I get synth, or I can go through this too.
You're on the
Sure.
You're on the right path.
It's me. Yeah. Okay. I can.
Yeah, you can do it.
No. You do. I've been talking too much. Synth, it's your turn.
Okay. So basically, deductive reasoning is that you have enough information in the premises in order to logically conclude your conclusion, and that's like deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning would be an inferential claim, and you would make this inferential claim maybe based on like some outside knowledge to the premises, and that would be like an inductive reason. And there are, for deductive arguments, they can be valid, invalid, sound or unsound, and then for inductive, they can be cogent or uncogent, basically just meaning good inference, bad inference.
So hopefully, if your mind's in the same place mine was those magical 5 years ago when I first learned this, you'll start to see the synthesis between inductive and deductive reasoning, right? Because any inferential thought that we have probably came from some form of deductive reasoning somewhere, right? Is like, oh, of course gravity exists because I learned it in 4th grade or something like that, right? Well, like, how did you learn it in 4th grade? Right? Like, who taught you that it worked, right? Your teacher, right? Like, how do you know that that's a source to be trusted? Well, I trust the state. I trust American education. Well, do you? Well, even if you don't want to go down that route, right? Let's say you don't even want to go down that route. How can you be sure that there's not a purple elephant that's invisible, by the way, in your room somewhere?
I'm familiar with this argument.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to say Hume popularized this. Who was the purple elephant or the pink elephant? For my introduction to it was Hume. But I guess that was a TA at the time. He was probably not even being paid to teach those courses for his because the labor shit. He was a TA, so he was just getting credits, and he was probably not doing a good job. But I'm pretty sure the pink elephant was from Hume. It's basically that, like, your senses are the suppliers of all of your, I don't even want to say presuppositions, but all information out there, and your senses can lie too. And this is like, it merges with Descartes a little bit, but just generally that, like, all inductive thought is innately flawed.
Okay, I know the whole sense thing. That's something, like, whenever I talk to religious people, like, a lot of times they'll say, like, well, my senses tell me this, or I know this, and I'll have to be like, well, your senses could lie to you, right? Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Okay, I kind of.
And it's also reason too, that, like, the human power of reason through inductive thought is like flawed. And it's, I'll just say this, right? Like, I took that class and thought, like, that was my Philosophy 101 course, right? It was, I can't remember. I think it was like ontology or some shit like that. I took that class and was instantly inspired to sign up for more classes. Every single person, I had a 30 student class, or a 30 peer class, right? Every single person from that class did not sign up for any of the courses that I took thereafter. I did not see any of them in my continuing on to minor in philosophy schoolwork. So just take that for what it's worth. I just think epistemology and ethics especially are, like, terrible places to start for philosophy. That's my own personal qualia that supplied me with that. Like, I just have a very personal experience thinking that, like, most people don't like to think that way when they think about, like, thinking.
Okay.
Yeah. But I could be wrong. Ethics is a really fun conversation to have, especially with normies that, like, don't really think about their moral framework. They just kind of wander through life thinking, oh, of course murder's wrong, and incest is wrong, and slavery's wrong.
Yeah,
and then, like, they don't. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, this is something that, again, like, I whenever I'm talking to just, like, real shitlords on this platform, it's always these claims that they'll say, like, oh, some claim, like, I don't know, murder is bad, right? I'll be like, all right, well, can you substantiate that? They're like, no, it just is. You just know this. I'm like, no, like, I'm not saying this because I disagree with you. I'm saying this because I want to push you to actually, like, think about why you're coming to these conclusions, right? Like, justify this, and don't just say to me, well, we all know it's true, because that doesn't do anything, right? Because there are going to be claims. There are going to be claims that we make that two people are not going to agree on, that both think are inherently true. Yeah. So, like, you have to. It's kind of like everything is permitted until we actually, like, make an excuse for it, right? Like, I don't know, murder. It starts off as permitted until we say, well, it hurts other people. It's a negative. You're infringing on people's rights. rights. All right, we should probably strike that off the permitted. Like,
yeah. Or you could say like morally neutral. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No,
Yeah,
go
makes sense.
ahead. I was
Morally
gonna say
neutral.
I think it comes from the concept that it's sort of like it arrives from like the golden rule, which is that it says do unto others as they would do unto you, but ultimately it comes from the fact that it's like if you don't want anyone to kill you, you shouldn't kill other people, and that's how you know. Like that's it. It's like you kind of have. It's like because otherwise there is no basis to say that it's wrong, other than your own essential experience for it.
Yeah, so that's called ethical egoism, and there's a lot of. I'll say there are academic scholars that exist today that do adhere to ethical egoism, so you're not entirely alone. But there's a lot of problems. Yeah, and I love you. By the way, Brento, I love you. I'm not trying to sound condescending.
I just go ahead. You were saying.
The only reason I say this is just to classify it and maybe inspire you to look into it. Is like look into ethical egoism, right? And maybe you'll read through this and be like, this wasn't what I was saying, and then you could message me on Twitch or Discord or something like that. I think we're friends. I don't know. I'll add you right now.
On Twitch, sure.
Add friend. There we go, buddy. You're my first conservative pal. Nice. Just like look into it maybe and just explore it. Because again, like if you are philosophically inclined, like I was, like these are very interesting topics. I think ethics is an amazing category of philosophy to expand one's knowledge on, because I think it literally applies to every single human being, whether they know it or not. Right? Yeah. You can avoid largely, and to your own detriment as well, the say philosophy of political science or the philosophy of math. You can avoid those topics, but when it comes to ethics, I mean, even if we don't know it, we all adhere to some code, right? If your code is to kill everybody, then like there's some moral code that you're subscribing to there. Even if you claim that you're not, maybe you're like a misanthrope or some shit like that, and you're just determined that humans are the blight and scourge of the planet and that all need to die or something. Like there's some ethical code there. I do think ethics is a very interesting topic, so I just think it's terrible to start off with because like you need so many foundations, I think, to really get invested into ethics. You can't just dive right in. I feel like I don't know. I just think it's horrible.
I think you should always start wherever you find interest, essentially.
Yeah.
Wherever anyone is interested in starting, whatever question is bothering them, seek the answer to that question. That's where you start in philosophy. Yeah. Like there's no better way to start.
I think I'd mostly agree. I just feel like I don't know. I just feel like most people probably aren't interested in ethics when they first started. You know, like they think they are. Like they think that they're like the ethical god. Everybody thinks that they're walking around with the best moral framework ever. If everybody just thought like me, there would be no murder, no death, no famine, and everybody would get their fill. Right.
True.
But they don't actually like question their beliefs and especially like apply them on we'll say on a maxim level, as Kant would really appreciate. But again, that's like neither here nor there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I often say most people are probably deontologists with a very weird and estranged look at like what deontology is. There's some variation of like divine command theory, but like they largely try to claim that they're secular. Like I believe in God and I think killing is wrong and that like hell exists, but and heaven exists. But like,
well, here let me ask you then. I guess like if you can't base, or if the basis for understanding that it's wrong to kill people isn't based off of your own understanding of death and your own death, what basis is there for recognizing that it's wrong to kill people?
Pain.
Where does that arise from?
And suffering.
Yeah, so utilitarian. So this is great. I love what we're doing.
Utilitarianism.
So you just saw what you just saw literally in action was utilitarian explanation for why death is killing people is bad. I could give you my own code. I'm sure Simon has his own code. Micro could probably chime in with some. I don't know. There's different moral frameworks that exist. It's a very interesting topic. I just feel like for people that aren't this inclined into philosophy and talking about meta ethics, which is what we're talking about right now, holy shit, this is a terrible place to start. Like, you don't know what the fuck I say. No. Think about this. I say the words moral framework to a 20-year-old that like paid $500 for a class in philosophy that they didn't even want to pay for because it's an ACE requirement in their college curriculum, and they're like, what the fuck does meta mean? What is ethics even? Like they don't know what any of these terms mean, and I'm not trying to shit on them. They need more.
That's why they're in the class, though.
Well, no, why they're in the class is because they were forced to sign up for it because because college curriculum is whack as shit. And I don't disagree with ACE, by the way. I just think it's terrible to apply it to forced to classes that you need to pay for. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I just
okay. Yeah. Still, they need the answer. What is the basis for knowing that murder is wrong, if not for the fact that you yourself don't want to be killed? You could say utilitarianism. We're done. Move on. But no, what do you mean?
Well, that's what the synth means. If you're asking me specifically, like why?
Well, you said end suffering.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you know that suffering is bad? Why should you end it?
Right. So this is actually a
This is
really
the same
good
question.
one.
Oh yeah,
Don't
you
kill
gotta
us
listen.
suffering,
because you
suffering
suffer. Why should you
doesn't-
suffer?
Let us talk. Let us talk.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
suffering necessarily implies some connotation of negativity, right?
Okay.
That like pain maybe I could accept like as a semantical argument of like because there are sadists and masochists that like pain can be pleasurable at some level, but suffering is always unpleasurable or is always negative, right? That like that would be the just even by semantic definition, like that would be where it would be coming from, right?
Yeah, it's tautological. Suffering is bad because it's suffering, right? Like, or I don't know.
Yeah.
So suffering
It's
is like the
basically-
definition of negative and bad. It's the one,
pretty
it's the
much.
concept, and so it can never be interpreted any other way. It's a truism in itself that suffering is negative and bad.
Tautology, yeah. Well, by definition, right? Like by the principle of non-contradiction, like
by no definition. It's its own definition, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, wait. So let's pin this down then a little bit. Like, so Synth has a. I'm going to speak a little bit for you, Synth. I hope you're okay with this. So, if what you're trying to do is like pigeonhole, like, oh well, Synth, what would you say to somebody who enjoys sexual pleasure that would be seen as suffering? Well, they wouldn't see it as suffering. It would be pleasure for them, right?
Correct,
If you're talking
right.
about, like if you're talking about sadism, like, what if somebody enjoys is a masochist and they enjoy it when other people hurt them? Well, that's not suffering. That's pleasure. If they enjoy it, by definition, that's pleasure.
Sure.
Could God have a fetish so strong that they enjoyed suffering?
This isn't about God. This is utilitarian. This is a way to explain ethics without God. I hate you, Micro.
No.
This is why Mills is so concerned with this. This is an Enlightenment era philosopher that came about because he wanted to explain pleasure and pain without the need of God. And you get this motherfucker out of here. Get him out. Get him. Kick his ass out. Get the
This
fuck
got
out.
heated quick.
He's
God.
Mills was trying to
Oh, boy.
avoid God, motherfucker.
no.
He wasn't trying to introduce
Wired.
God. I'm so triggered.
Wired's gone off.
I guess
I'm just kidding.
Wired's gotten triggered. Oh no.
Back to the.
By the way, I haven't read enough Mills. I'm sure Mills didn't have anything wrong with God, but Mills, one of the fathers of utilitarianism, you will. I would like to believe that Mills wanted to explain the desire to satiate everyone's desire to achieve pleasure and minimize everyone's desire to minimize pain or suffering without the need of God, and that this is largely the way in which utilitarianism is.
Mm-hmm. I just think it's interesting because then like that means that within utilitarianism, the concept of suffering stands alone. It stands on its own, and everything else is built against it, right?
And pleasure.
The concept of but it's primarily suffering. If you
no, negative utilitarian is suffering. Just normal utilitarian, classical utilitarian.
Sure.
Rule. Relevant was just in here. He considers himself a rule or an act utilitarianist.
Sure.
Act utilitarian takes a synthetic approach of trying to maximize not only pleasure but also minimize pain. You have to do it simultaneously. It's a synthesis.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, but just how you're saying, like, you said ground your axioms, right? So I would say like the concept of suffering is the axiom because it's self-defined.
Yeah. So just to be clear, I actually agree with what you're saying. So utilitarianism is largely in academic philosophy regarded as a separate from deontological ethics. The point that I think you're trying to make here is very profound, and I actually agree with you. I do technically think that utilitarianism could be a form of deontology if one view it this way, because it is like there is a code to utilitarianism which is trying to maximize some tautological argument. Now, I would love to hear. I'm not saying this as a hardcore criticism of utilitarianism. There are other criticisms of utilitarianism that you bring up, but yeah, I'd be interested to hear like how Simon or Synth, what their thoughts on that are. If that was your point, or did I make something out of nothing there?
My point was that the concept of utilitarianism rests on the concept of suffering because that's self-defined and that's something that stands on its own. It's essentially self-evident. It's like the first truth is that people suffer and that should be reduced. And that should be reduced is like the second step, but people suffer. That's understood. Now begin. That's the base. That's the ground floor, the foundation.
Sure. And so to explain that, you can get into not Kantianism, although that's technically a thing. You can get into deontological ethics, which states it's the normative ethical theory that the morality of an action should be based on whether the action itself is right or wrong under a series of rules, rather than based upon the consequences of action. This is how we largely separate ourselves from consequentialism, is that we look at the act itself. Is this act by definition right or wrong under a series of rules? And then evaluate every action that we can do like according to said series of rules. You could technically argue utilitarianism lists out a set of rules, maximize the largest number of people's pleasure whilst reducing the largest number of people's suffering. And that's, you could call that like mass utilitarianism. Either way, that is technically deontological. I don't know. I don't want to say by definition, because again, like I'm not the person who wrote the book on this shit. But like as I've thought about utilitarianism more, I've actually considered it more and more technically in line with deontological ethics to some extent, despite it being largely a code of ethics that was established to separate itself from a form of deontology. But again, I would love to hear like Simon or Synth chime in on this, because I know Synth, you are a utilitarian, right?
Rule utilitarian. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And Simon, are you?
I'm in flux. I'm a bit confused right now. So.
You guys talk, or you folks talk. I can't chime in.
I mean, basically, I mean, I only use like utilitarian like as my main thing. Yeah. Because like mainly because like if I have to make the justification of like using a system, then it should probably be justified for everyone to use that system. And if I just go complete egoism, then like I'm kind of telling everyone to fuck everyone else over. Yeah. I can't really like outwardly fucking portray that, right? That like maybe that can like play a little bit into my utilitarianism, but like it can't be like my guiding philosophy, right? So like that's kind of why I use utilitarianism to like evaluate everything that I can, and try to get the most amount of well-being as I can, I guess. Yeah. But yeah.
I really like that you said that. I feel like I'm controlling the conversation here. I don't mean to do that.
No, it's fine.
No, you're good.
I just wanted to say, Synth, what you said is exactly how I approach utilitarianism. Well, I take a sentient utilitarian approach whenever I do discuss ethics from the framework of like not having a meta-ethic discussion. Like if I'm talking to, again, not even just conservatives, because the libs are guilty of this shit too. Whenever I'm talking to somebody who clearly has like no formal training in meta-ethics, I just assume some sentient utilitarian approach, because I'm not going to sit here and explain, oh, well, you see, I'm a moral error theorist and technically I'm a non-cognitivist, but I do believe in stronger systems of belief. And I think that there can be some moral systems that are superior to others based on their inferential application through a sentential approach of like just applying simple theories of logic and like trying to parse out like what human value is. Like I don't go all that shit. I just say like, hey, for the purposes of the conversation, I'm going to be approaching it from a sentient utilitarian approach. Stating that every being, insofar as they can experience consciousness to rather subjective degree, deserves the I suppose right to have their pleasure maximized and their pain minimized, or rather their pleasure maximized and their suffering. But again, I largely think like ethics is a wash, even though it's a very interesting conversation to have with people. I'm mostly an error theorist. I don't believe there's any. Yeah.
Error theorist. What is this?
This is a fringe philosophy, my friend. You're going down the rabbit hole.
Also, hey, really quick. Let's define meta-ethics. You're saying meta-ethics a lot. Like, what do you mean meta-ethics?
Okay, so I'll just define the word meta for you real quick, because that clears up like any other conversation about metaphysics or meta anything. Meta just means above. So when we're having a meta ethic,
the greatest, the greater, right?
Or the like. I often, actually met the way that Micro just recently, like very briefly chimed in, like League of Legends. That's actually a really good way to think about it. Meta game. What are you talking about when you're talking about the meta game of League of Legends? You're talking about the most superior way to you're having a discussion on what you think is the best way to play League of Legends. In some ways, you could apply this to like this definition to the conversation of meta ethics. How do we define right or wrong? What is probably the best way by which we define these terms? That's kind of what meta ethics is concerned with. Whereas normative ethics is like fuck the meta ethical discussion. I'm mostly concerned in a normative ethics conversation to tell you what is right or wrong without necessarily speaking to why these are the case. If I was having a normative ethics discussion with you, I would just be sitting here saying, no, you shouldn't eat meat. Yes, you should kiss people that you like a lot and that like you back. No, you shouldn't hit a fascist even though they're pissing you off. Or I don't know. Like in a meta ethics discussion, we'd be talking about why those things are the case, and we would be discussing like the modal processes by which we arrive.
Sure, morality. Universal morality in a sense.
Did you get what I was trying to explain?
I understand.
Yeah,
I have a general understanding of what the word meta means, but always as far as it's going to be applied to different fields of study, you know, like you could say no, it's always the same. It's like, okay, sure, but we're being specific with it. So, you know, like
just think like if you played any MOBAs, like what is the meta game for Dota 2 right now? Oh, always pick Darkseer. Sure. It's kind of the same thing with like ethics. Like what is the best way to, or I shouldn't even say best way because it's not always conservative. It's just a branch of ethics that seeks to understand the nature of ethical properties, statements, attitudes, and judgments. Yeah. It's just like us asking the question, like, why do we believe these things? Like, is it the best way to, or is it a way that, like, you know, like why do we think about these things? Why do we think about these things in the way that we think about these things? If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. There's a good way to think of it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, we were going somewhere before that, and then we kind of dove into we were going down the error theory rabbit hole.
Oh yeah.
What else? Fuck. I guess
I was going to say God is the best philosopher. To call back to an earlier topic.
It is true.
It's good because God made it so. That's a good argument. Just saying.
God
Are y'all
okay? Recondition.
I don't want to get us too off track, and we can totally just say one word and then move back. But are y'all familiar? I know Synth is. Are y'all familiar with Darth Dawkins?
Yes.
Yeah.
That dude pisses me the fuck. Like I am a philosophy noob, and that dude's philosophy is literally just I know God is real because God is real, and he told me that he's real, and then he just it's so frustrating.
Darth is a fucking memer, dude.
Darth Dawkins.
There's no way this is a real person, you know.
He was my intro. He was my intro to epistemology. Oh.
Like literally everything he did, do the opposite, and then there you go. You have epistemology.
That's a good start, yeah.
I was gonna say, holy shit. This guy is your like introduction to epistemology. Like this guy's just sitting here like, oh, we know these things because of a set of presuppositions handed down to us by God. Well, fuck, he used that word presuppositions. Let me look it up. Oh, he's using it incredibly incorrectly.
He's like, well, I define presupposition this way, and because we both are using the word presupposition, that means my presupposition is just as valuable as yours. It's just as valid. It's like, no, dude. Oh, it's so frustrating. Anyways. We can get back. Sorry, I didn't mean to like take us off track.
No.
I said one word to Darth Dawkins and he banned me from the Discord.
Oh shit.
Oh yeah. Well, I think you were actually supporting me. I was in there. I don't think you heard it, but I think I ultimately got to the question: does God know like what it's like to jack someone off or something like that?
He knows
and like
everything.
that was like ultimately I led up to that with like a series of questions beforehand that I knew would get me there, and it felt so good. And he like I left immediately after that, and then people like added me in his Discord, and then he banished me. Yeah, that was pretty fun.
Such a tool. I actually saw Sarah Silverman live, and she picked out a religious person in the crowd and asked them, would you like something along the same lines of that? Like, does God know? Would you suck God's dick if he asked you to, or something like that?
Jesus. Yeah. All right.
Say that God knows everything, and then say God doesn't know what it feels like to suck a dick. It's not true. You can't do that.
Wait, I want to get real quickly. I know this wasn't a topic list, but Brento and I were going back and forth enough on it that I feel like I need to at least say this. Brento, there's a really interesting study of ethics known as like non-cognitivism. I should say, and you can look at what the fuck is that? Is that
whoa? What is that?
Oh, is that?
No, go ahead. Keep going.
I think everything's okay.
It's gone now, so
I think it's okay.
Go
what
on.
was it? I didn't hear.
My mind like is drawing blanks right now. Okay, yeah. Non-cognitivism and then specifically emotivism is something to maybe look into if you're curious on dunking on anybody that claims that their meta-ethical view of the world is right. Because emotivism is like probably one of the better ways to explain normative claims in ethics. Have you heard of hoorah / boo theory?
No.
Yeah. Basically, it's the theory that like every time we make a normative claim about anything regarding ethics, that we're really just expressing our emotions in another way. When we say things like murder is wrong, what we're really just saying is boo, murder. I don't like murder. Similarly, and I'm not joking, by the way, this is a real theory.
I got you.
It's as real as philosophy theories get. The same goes in the reverse direction. Anytime we say charity is good, what we're really just saying is hoorah, charity. I like charity. And yeah, it's a really like it keeps happening. By the way, is that me?
I think it
It
is you.
happened a
Just
little
happened.
bit.
Is it me?
Yeah.
Is it Micro? Every time it's that clip, it's that like.
Yeah, it's
That's you, Micro. I just Micro. I'm triggered.
Yeah, no, that's probably my microphone. My
It's okay.
microphone does stupid shit all the time, and I don't know why.
mm.
Let me see what I can do. I don't know what I can do, but I'll try.
Have you tried plugging it back in again?
What I think I might do is just mute myself when I'm not talking.
Oh, okay.
So I just linked you to the emotivism wiki page. You can read over it for yourself. Decide. A-Year came up with it. I kind of respect A-Year. He's a pretty cool guy. You can. Well, I don't want to say came up with it. I'm sure people thought about this before him, but that he's like widely accepted as the, the memer, so to speak, for emotivist theory regarding the 20th century. But it's an interesting thing to read into if you're curious on metaethics, and especially one of the we'll say the radical anti-ethic positions. Although I wouldn't say it's that. It's just like this is a theory of how to view ethics. So that anytime we're talking about ethics, we're really just expressing our emotions in some way, and that ethics probably don't exist, or like morality rather doesn't exist as some concrete or like defined substance or material in the world. That it's rather just like all in our heads, and especially wrapped up in our pathos. Or
I think it's a relationship, essentially.
You think it's a relationship?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. What do you mean?
Well, so just to recap what you just said, like that morality doesn't exist in the world, right?
I did not say that.
You did not say that, but that's
that's
what
the
you were
motivation.
saying,
Yeah. I'm an error theorist. Let's be clear. I'm a moral skeptic. I don't necessarily believe that we can make knowledge claims on morality as to whether or not it exists. I hold the null position that like morality. If you've heard, I'm getting real deep. Have you ever heard of Schrodinger's cat? I'm sorry to derail you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know Schrodinger's cat.
I think morality is kind of like in that state where it's like we can't really say one way or the other whether or not it's right or whether or not it exists or doesn't. Like it could be dead, it could be alive, it could be both. I don't know. It's like we don't have a clear knowledge claim on that. But either way, yeah, that's what emotivism is.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess I would say I think morality comes from relationship, so it can only exist between two people. Like there is no morality unless there's two parties, right? So it's something that it sort of arises between people in a relationship.
Okay.
Wouldn't be objective. It's not written in stone somewhere. Like.
So I hate to burst the bubble, and it's probably not. I don't think that you're this.
Sure.
That you think you're like stating anything uber profound here, but there is actually a moral theory, kind of more or less talking about what you're talking about. It's
Sure.
called,
I'm not saying it's like my idea or something.
Yeah. No. And I don't say that to shit on you. I just wanted to I'm trying to facilitate the conversation. Like I would be
it's fine.
I would be enthralled to see that like tomorrow you start streaming after a 15-day hiatus. By the way, what the fuck's going on with that?
Oh well, I'm on other people's streams, so I'm just.
I know. No, you're not. But no, I'm fucking around. But it would be awesome tomorrow to see you do a 2 or 3 hour stream looking at all these terms. But moral relativist theory is basically the statement that, or is the theory that, or the view rather, that moral judgments are true or false only relative to some particular standpoint. And this can be applied to society. It could be applied to individuals. But just that like morals are all relative in relation to, again, standpoint, be it cultural or historical period. Oftentimes we credit Abraham Lincoln for ending slavery without really questioning, why didn't he end it sooner or something like that? Well, it's all relative to the time period. So you got to take a historical context.
Sure.
George Washington owned a bunch of slaves. Well, it's understandable because, he existed in that time period and, he wasn't like, we don't parade him for being a philosophical thinker. So we're not going to judge him for not having thought too abstractly about things. So
sure.
Yeah.
It's something to look at. Morality is relative though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you just said that it can only exist between two people, right? That it cannot exist with. Okay.
Right. Well, I don't think it exists outside of a relationship, but I don't think that means that it's relative.
I'm trying to understand that. Say that one more time?
I think it's absolute, which means that I think that the way you treat other people is like absolute, and it's defined. There's a nature to right and wrong. There's a defined way that is right or wrong to treat other people. But outside of other people, I don't think there is such a thing as morality. Morality only exists between two, I guess we'll say the word conscious people interacting with each other. Right, so in that sense, it's a relationship, I suppose, but I don't think it's relative. I don't think it changes.
you said that there was a right or a wrong way to treat people, right?
Right.
And that,
Yes.
did you say that changes person to person or no?
No, it doesn't change person to
It
person.
doesn't change.
It does not change. No.
Okay. I'm gonna pressure you on this. Okay.
Sure,
You ready?
sure. That's fine.
So somebody runs up to you and they're gasping for air and they're shaking you violently. They're like, Brento, I need you to like punch me right in the face. Do it.
Right.
Square in the face as hard as you can. Give me a bloody nose. What do you do then?
Well, I mean, that's obviously right. Like, no, okay, so I'll kind of like work through a little bit of that, but depending, personally, I'll just say personally, me, I probably wouldn't do that right away. But the question of whether or not you do that, I guess, would depend. I don't think it would be necessarily immoral because you are doing what they are asking you to. So it's done with like kind of consent. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's sort of it's a question of violence, but it's also a question of consent.
Yeah. Just watch Fight Club and you'll understand.
Say what now?
So just watch Fight Club and you'll understand because they literally do that in Fight Club.
Exactly. Yeah. You to punch me as hard as you can. Right. So yeah, okay. That my answer is that, well, I guess I personally, if that literally did happen to me on the street, I would say no. But if a friend really asked me to or something like that, maybe, sure. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe that was a poor hypothetical. I'm just trying to push you on, not push you like in a negative way.
That's fine. I got you.
Yeah. These are really interesting discussions to me. So I always love like arguing these, assuming like, people can have like reasonable discussions about this. I just wanted to like understand I'd love to see, especially like Synth or something like to push you on this, because like I just want to understand the extent to which you claim that morals do exist. They are absolute, but that they exist only ever between like on a person to person basis, and that you said are unchanging, right? Or am I pushing that on? Yeah. That they are again like absolute, so to speak.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
Wait, I would just be interested where you're drawing the absolute from.
Yeah.
Like, what's the source of the absolute?
I think they're based on like innate equality. I think people have an innate equality, even though it's not like necessarily like things like height or weight or things like that. I guess so. Now this in this sense, it'd almost be like maybe a spiritual thing, but I think that people are innately equal in their life, and so in being that they are alive, and so that you treat them equally, and that is where I assume that the absolutism of morality arises from, that you respect that equality.
I see.
And so
what
that
do you think
doesn't
about animals
change.
then? That would be my question.
I think you should respect animals too, but
do you eat meat?
I have a hard time saying that because I do eat meat. So I don't know if they're necessarily equal to human beings in that way.
I think there's more fundamental questions I feel like we could push you on to try to iron this out more.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So, shit. Okay. So everybody is, I'm mostly using words, I hope. I'm trying to paraphrase. You think that everybody has a fundamental, like, we'll say like essence. I know that's like whatever, but like fundamental state of being that like more or less determines them as equal to one another, and that everybody deserves.
Essentially, yeah.
Earlier you were saying that like everybody deserves the same respect, right? That like everybody should be treated the same.
Yeah, essentially.
Like I think you
to
even
treat others as yourself is essentially.
Yeah. I think you even literally did say the golden rule, kind of, right?
Yes, right.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just curious, like, do you apply this to the most hardened criminal out there that has like killed 5 people and told you to their face that they were willing to kill a 6th if they ever got a gun?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. You would treat them the same as you treat everybody else?
Right. But in that sense, if I was that person, right?
Okay.
Then I would be like, well, I should go to jail and don't give me a gun. Right.
Wait,
so it's like, I would treat them the same as everybody else, but they would still be held accountable for their actions the same way that everyone else would be held accountable for the same actions. So they would be equal, but they would still have to be held accountable for the actions that they took, the same way that everyone else would too.
So first, that's a cool answer. I just don't see how that follows from the framework that you established.
How so?
I think, well, just because you said that you treat everyone equal, and then like suddenly, like it seems like you kind of abandoned that to treat this person specifically unequally.
How so? How is it unequal?
Well, because again, like you said that you'd like everybody has some fundamental characteristic that deems that like that warrants they be treated equally. I'm asking you, like, well, would you treat a serial killer that says that they would kill more people if they ever got a gun equal to how you treat everyone else? And then you said no because they.
No, I said yes. I said yes, but they would still have to face the consequences of their actions. But they would face the consequences of their actions the same way that anyone and everyone equally would face the consequences of their actions.
I just don't see how like consequences of action supersedes the state of being that you stated everyone has to determine that they all be treated equally. It seems like your fundamental axiom here is that everybody should be treated equally. And then you're like trying to make an exception for like, well, if you break the law or like try to kill or violate other people's autonomy, then like that means that that means that this gets to kind of break the rule a little bit here of the fundamental axiom. And we got to send you off to jail or something like that. It seems like this is your pillar. You'd want everything else to stem from this, not say, hey, this is my pillar, but if somebody is breaking this, then
right? But they're breaking the pillar by treating others the way they don't treat themselves, by killing them.
And again, so like there are moral frameworks that like that answer in much the same way that you're answering here. I don't see how. So you said, again, just to be clear, you said this.
Yeah. That's fine.
Everybody deserves to be treated equally, and that's your fundamental moral framework here. That everybody should be treated equally.
Yeah.
If everybody should be treated equally, right?
Yes.
Like, and that's the premise. That's like the like.
Yes, right. That's the foundation is inherent equality. Yeah,
we're writing like a thesis paper, BrentoBox, theory on normative ethics. Everybody should be like premise 1. Everybody should be treated equally.
Everyone has inherent equality. Sure. Yeah. Yes.
And then like page number 1, citate works cited. Nothing is send it off to the professor, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
If that is the underlying philosophy behind all of this, I don't see how. I'm just not entirely sure how we can suddenly stop treating somebody equally just because they themselves don't adhere to the moral code. Your moral code is that everybody ought to be treated equally. Why does it matter if they themselves are violating that rule? Are you saying that Sorry.
Go ahead. No, I want to hear your question.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It seems to be the case that like now, if you were to say that like this is a maxim that must be applied by everyone needs to follow this rule. This is not just my moral code, but this is the moral code of the law. Everyone need follow this rule.
Yes, right. Well, I think it's inherent. I think that's like I do think that, but I think that is inherently what I think that is like. Maybe I won't go too much further on this because I don't know. I wouldn't be able to like prove it necessarily, but I do think that in like a larger context. But I do think the idea of like tit for tat or equality in treating people as equals is like the foundation of law, of all law, essentially. Well, maybe not unjust law.
I was gonna say, even if I
certain laws that are like you could have a caste system, and that would be a law.
Right. Well, yeah, you go back in 300 years in the past, 200 years in the past, we got some very interesting laws that don't treat people equally. But let's say I granted you that the foundation of all law, and to some extent, again, I love philosophy. Philosophy guides a lot of our decisions in law. I dare say all of them. The philosophy of law is how we make these decisions. Is smart people come together, think about these things on a meta-ethical stand. Well, usually like regarding ethics, and they determine these decisions. I see Simon, you're shaking your head. Do you disagree?
Oh, I'm looking at chat. I'm not.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. That I do agree with you. Like, even if I granted you the idea that like all law stems from this general idea that we are all to be treated equally, then I don't see how. I just don't see how.
Well, okay, if you don't treat everyone equally, what's the alternative?
Well, it's not about the alternative. My question is just how does specifically this idea of like we should treat everyone equally. That's in and of itself. That's a normal
right.
I'm challenging the framework really.
Okay, now so here I'm gonna try and I'll try and like sum up what I'm assuming is going on. So it's like I'm saying treat everyone equally. There's someone who goes out and they kill 5 people and we put them in jail, and you're saying we're not treating them equally because we're putting them in jail. So that's like a violation of the axiom.
Yeah, and so you would say that like it is because they violated the axiom to begin with that they ought not be considered a part of the axiom, right?
Well, they are a part of the axiom because there will be a consequence to the action, but that consequence will be applied to everyone equally if they take those same actions.
Okay, so then I think this is consequentialism then, that you're saying that like actions should only be considered right or wrong depending on like their consequences, maybe.
No, it's not about whether they're considered right or wrong. I wasn't getting into whether or not they're considered right or wrong. I'm just saying that the idea that everyone is inherently equal and should be treated equally isn't violated by the fact that if someone is held to consequences for their actions, that doesn't mean that just because you're holding someone consequences for their actions, you're treating them unequally from other people, because other people can still be held to the same consequences should they take the same actions, and that's equality.
I see. Well, shit. It feels more. I don't say this in any way, shape, or form. Like again,
Sure.
With like the intent to offend, but this feels really like tautological.
Okay.
Yeah. Synth or Simon or even Micro.
Oh yeah, I am.
I just have a.
Oh,
Sorry, yeah, go. You got it.
Oh, okay. My thought of it just then was that it seems like I could pretty easily disprove the equality thing by the simple fact of someone killing someone else. Is that if this person, whoever it is, kills up another person, it seems like everyone isn't equal because he's valued his life to higher than someone else's. So it doesn't really seem like the principle that works itself either. That's what my critique would be.
Or you mean that because people can treat each other unequally, it means that people are inherently unequal because
if everyone is equal and someone is doing something that results in an unequal action, well, it doesn't seem like everyone's equal.
What's an equal action?
What
is an action that is inherently equal? It seems like
that adheres to equality that you would define. That's what I mean.
I mean, I think anytime you take an action, you may, well, I don't know, technically every action creates an equal and opposite reaction, but I don't know. It seems like the disagreement here is that if someone takes an action, they're inherently creating an inequality, so therefore equality doesn't exist or something.
Yeah.
Whether they're murdering or whether they're doing something positive either. Like we could talk about murder, which is very cut and dry, but we could also say that, hey, what if someone like plants a field of trees or something, right? And that would be like, we could call that a positive action, and therefore then they would be unequal, or that would be an unequal. It would create an inequality, right?
Yeah. So it seems like you have another underlying thing underneath the equality thing that you evaluate good and bad. Because you evaluated the planting the tree thing as good and bad without really referring to the equality bit.
Sure. Well, no, I think the equality is innate. I guess I don't think it can technically really change. You can take positive or negative actions, but I don't think it changes your innate equality like to other human beings.
Okay, I don't know. I fail to see the relevancy of the equality bit then, in reference to like a moral conversation.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. Well, here, let me ask. So, is there anything anyone could do that would make it that you could like make them into a slave and say like, oh, okay, you're not a human being, or you're not even a human being anymore. You're a slave, or you're cattle or something.
Yeah.
Well, like what?
Well, someone could consent to being your slave.
They could consent to it.
Yeah.
Well, why do you
say,
need their
I will
consent?
do everything that you want me to do.
Why do you need their consent?
Well, because that's the framework that I would go by.
Okay. But I'm saying it's like, if we think slavery is wrong because it's wrong to imprison someone against their will, we're sort of like respecting the equality of human will, right? And there's nothing anyone can do to essentially like sell themselves into slavery. Like it's actually in U.S. law, at least I know, you cannot sell yourself into slavery and become a slave and be like, well, I'm no longer an autonomous person, I'm a slave. Like you can't do that
because it's too easily exploitable, right?
Yeah, correct. It's also it's exploitable. It's exploitable both in the sense that you could get someone to sign a contract and then literally give up their humanity, which would then make them essentially into a slave or a non-human being. Or you could also have someone sign a contract and they are no longer a human being with their own will, and they could commit an act that is like responsible, that someone else takes responsibility for, and then you could negate the contract and everything else and then negate the whole construction, and then no one would have been responsible because this person wasn't responsible for themselves when they took the action. They were a slave. They weren't even a human being. But now they are, and now I've freed them, but now the entity or the corporation that did this, they're gone too. You know, it's like you can never give away your personal responsibility. You can't give away your personal autonomy.
That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So in that sense, everyone has the same.
I have another question too about this general idea of treating people equally. That if y'all were still going on your idea, feel free to just like stop me, and I'll let y'all finish. Couldn't treating certain people without some certain preferences be considered like possibly immoral? Like, for instance, we have like handicapped people, right? And you could make the argument that like they get a lot of like preferential treatment that's not necessarily equal in our society, but we do that in order to, I guess, kind of like raise them to the point of equal or more equal in their like ability to do things.
Sure.
But I would say, I don't know, maybe this is just more of a nitpick on the verbiage of your.
No, sure, that's fine too. Yeah.
I actually think that's a very good point, Brento. Yeah, I'd like to hear your response to that.
Sure, go ahead. But go ahead. I don't know if you were done, Micro. If you just want to
and I mean, another reason that I would say this could also kind of be applied to certain things that, again, typically people on the right seem to be against, like affirmative action, like basically helping certain like minority groups in situations that may or may not be considered. I know some people on the right consider things like affirmative action racist in itself, but that's like I don't really want to talk about that. I'm
sure, that's fine. That's fine. We don't have to go there. You had a good point in your original question.
I'm more interested in things like handicapped people, right? Like doing things to help them.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess like I would almost say that the concept of like giving this type of assistance to handicapped people is in the recognition that they are equal to everyone else, and that we are trying to alleviate what they're essentially suffering from, or what they're kind of like going through, right?
Yeah.
We are recognizing their inherent equality, and that's why we take these actions to like build ramps or provide services and do braille or things like that, right? So it's like the fact that we are attempting to provide these things is in the recognition of their inherent equal worth.
All right, no, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. I kind of say, whenever I try to use arguments kind of like in like the vegan context, I guess, where people where I say like I don't extend kind of the social contracty thing to like animals, they would often say things like, well then mentally handicapped people that are so handicapped, right, that they can't even like hold a cognizant thought, like they're literally just like a brainstem, why don't we just like neutralize them or whatever? And I'm like, because we recognize that they're human, so we extend this contract even though they may or may not like have the same cognitive like level. So I guess I see where you're coming from. I don't know enough about philosophy to know if that actually makes your statement like legitimate, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Coherent.
Coherent, I guess. Yeah, cohesive. I don't know if this is like, if that actually is a good way to like explain this, but it sounds, I don't know.
This is where Mike gets. This is where Micro starts.
Sorry.
And a bunch of.
Am I deep? God damn it.
Yeah. Got the helium.
All right, I'll fix it. Y'all actually, talk amongst yourselves.
So this is something you said earlier, and I'm not sure if like you really want to like drill down on this, but like you said that like there's no way for us to like really sign away our autonomy. So like I have two examples. So with mental health facilities, checking yourself in and like saying, hey, I want you guys to take care of me for this mental health reason. And, I can try to refuse like any of the medications, but like, fuck it. Like at this point, like you're going to be able to like make me take them, or I'm not going to take them and I'm going to have to stay longer. Or like whatever the pretenses are for that, right? But you're kind of signing away some level of your autonomy while you're doing this. You sign away like being able to do certain things. You obviously can't like engage in certain activities or whatever that you could before. And like the same is true with turning yourself in for jail, right? That like this is something where you're kind of signing away your autonomy willingly.
Not completely.
Maybe it wouldn't be. Right. Maybe not completely willingly, because it would be the alternative. But let's just say the man has like $10 million and they can escape to like an extraditable country or whatever. So like turning yourself into jail, there would be like something where you're signing away your autonomy, right? You're kind of giving away your ability to do actions yourself.
To a degree, sure, but not completely, not like fundamentally. You're still a human being who's like responsible.
I mean,
you've given up some of your freedom and your function in society, but like you're not a soulless puppet. Like you can never completely lose your will.
I mean, you're kind of a number in a system.
Not completely. Never completely. Until you're dead, then you're a statistic. But no, as long as you're alive, you essentially are responsible for yourself. Even though you may give over some of your personal autonomy and your personal responsibility to some people in some way, or you might, be incarcerated, like you can never lose your personal responsibility or your ability to make a total choice for yourself in some way.
This is something I have to think about.
Well, I'll chime in just real quick.
Sure.
Okay.
I think, firstly, I think you're like on the right path here for moral frameworks as far as they're concerned. When you're trying to guide action, generally you want to try to have like a very, and I don't mean this in any way, shape, or form in a bad way, because a lot of moral frameworks do this. So you want to have a vague enough explanation or account for human action that can encompass enough activity whilst not making like an uber declarative statement on anything. Such that like we can kind of just like describe all of it in the dialectic method, if that makes sense. Which is to say, like, okay,
dialectic method. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, sure. So treat everybody equal. Well, fuck. What does that word mean? What is equality? And then it's like, oh, well, allow me to explain it for you. Equality in this context for handicapped people means uplifting them so that we can make them equal compared to everybody else. I think that's
not contextual though. Huh? Equality has to mean equality.
Okay. I think. For the record, this is my own personal analysis. I think the argument now went back 2 steps. So equality means equality. What is equality?
I was going to say, isn't that what we've been talking about this whole time?
Yeah.
Like
the whole point
point
of you adding that stipulation to Micro's counterexample was to encompass people that were not, I guess, treated equal by the birth lottery, right?
No, it's not. I mean, kind of. I guess like I'm not necessarily 100% on like the way that's framed, but when you say treated equal by the birth lottery, I'm like, okay, kind of, yeah.
Just like, yeah. So like if you have genetic, abnormalities, then you got kind of fucked by the birth lottery, right? It's like you couldn't have changed anything by that. You're born without a leg, like that just fucking sucks. That's all I meant. It's like we want to treat these people equally as defined by you, and the general notion of equality as well to kind of allow for it is the idea of like, we want to elevate these people to a similar status to what we all hopefully we'd all like to experience, or we'd all like to say we experience in society, right? Same thing for like affirmative action. Even I don't know what your stance on affirmative action is, but generally let's just assume your politics are out of the game. This is just your only concern with your moral philosophy here.
Sure.
We'd like to assume that like, well, not even assume. There's a litany of studies that demonstrate that systemic racism, to at least a pretty good extent, does exist in America today in a variety of different states, especially some of the southern ones. It can be extremely difficult for a Black person to have access to some very basic amenities that whites enjoy, such as like job opportunities, application for loans, etc. I'm sure I don't go on.
Sure.
You're saying that affirmative action seeks to correct that aspect, or like by your moral framework, of course, some form of action need be taken here, and that like at least as far as affirmative action goes, that might be one way of curbing it. Right, but of course, your more fundamental answer would be hopefully we just stop making these cultural biases, right?
Yeah, that would be that's the ultimate.
That's the ultimate goal. Yeah, by your moral.
Yeah.
I want to straight like as far as morals are concerned, this is like a fairly decent one. I treat others, I guess, as one would
is equals.
Yeah, it's just as equals. The only concern I'd really have is, again, just like really pinning down that word equal is to like mean something more than kind of the vague.
It means that there's no difference between you and another person fundamentally.
Yeah, and again, you have to get kind of like deep into the dialectic method there. I think of being like of explaining what a fundamental difference would constitute, and then like kind of. Sorry. I guess
that is sort of the definition. It's almost like a negative definition, is that equal means no difference.
Yeah. But again, like, and this is just the one that Micro brought up, is there are fundamental differences in ourselves that we need to account for somehow, right? Like
Sure.
some people are born shorter than other people, and that might lead to like a natural, if I don't know, tribal or instinctual desire for us to other ourselves from them. And that like equality in this case is more of like it's more of an answer rather to the like biological precepts that we have. Or
Well, it's an appeal to something beyond biology, essentially.
yeah, for sure, yeah. Like I said, as far as moral frameworks go, I mean, it is interesting to hear this being espoused from a conservative, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but I'd say this is definitely a fair one. Let's treat everybody equal, and you apply this to animals too. Yeah, why not?
Right. Well, I really do think it's the foundation for all morals, but you know,
This is treating people as equals.
yeah. I think that's the foundation of morality.
I would like to believe that. I just can't, under the fact that we go back even 60 years ago, and it seems to be that we had a real hard time. We had a real hard time doing that. So
we still do, man.
I mean, no, you're right. Again, it's like
the game.
If equality truly is the foundation for all morals, then what the fuck are we doing? What are so many people doing? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Not doing it. That's what we're doing. So.
Yeah. I guess that's a fair one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, is it the foundation? If not, a lot of people are doing it. But I see what you're saying. You're saying that morals do exist, that outside of the human experience, we can observe some. Well, no, but you said that they only exist inside the relationship between people, right?
Yes. Although, you know what? I might be able to. I don't know if I can necessarily 100% stand by that one. I think I do think that, but you know what? I don't know if I could necessarily be like 100%. But I am 100% on the equality.
Yeah.
Yeah. But outside of the relationship, I'm unsure.
Would you say that like all throughout human history and even today, just most people that experience because it requires at least two actors, maybe you'd even add in rational, because like would you say that people that can't even conceive of morals can engage in morals?
I think they experience morals, yeah.
People that can't even engage in morals. Well, so like animals can experience morals?
Yeah, I think so. I think that animals can even tell the difference between unfair treatment.
I mean, there's been some sort of demonstrations, right? That like,
I don't know, man. When a lion rips up a zebra, I have a hard time believing that they can.
Yeah, but they're of a different like that's true. You're right. That's true. But it's like a different kind of thing. But like I don't know. They've done some. I've just seen some studies. I'm not a fucking expert on this, but
no, you are right. There to some extent there are like I think chimps especially can experience.
Yeah, chimps. They'll give some chimp like a grape, and then they'll give another chimp like a bushel of grapes, and they're like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, I need the grapes," you know. And they can tell. They have this idea. So I think they also know how to use money.
Yeah, but is money indicative of morals?
Yeah.
No, but it's an exchange. It's a rate of exchange, and they can keep track of things, so they can understand fairness and equality.
That's more of I feel like I don't know. I was gonna say that seems more of like a display of higher level intelligence, but I wonder like what kind of higher level things like transactions of money like wouldn't include some level of morals, right? Because I guess somebody would have to know. I don't know, because when I was thinking about things like prices and like taking advantage of people, but I don't fucking. Stop making me.
I also wonder, I think there are studies where they've given animals like two different kinds of food. They've given them both of the foods, and then they've seen which one they like better, or it doesn't really matter. They've given the one they like better to one, and the one they don't like as much to one, and then like the other one that doesn't like it as much obviously has a reaction. I wonder if they do that test, except they don't actually give them both of the foods. They just have two foods that are the same amount, and they don't know whether they like the other one or not. I wonder if they would still have the same reaction.
I don't think they would if they don't know.
Then, yeah, they wouldn't have the information necessary, right?
Right.
Like, they wouldn't actually.
What you don't understand, I guess.
You wouldn't actually understand like transactions. Then
you'd have no reference.
Yeah, so I was gonna say like that's actually the stance I take. So animals can act in a way that like may seem altruistic, but it's very difficult for us to parse down whether or not that's because they have some deeper like we'll say like a complicated understanding of what like morality is, as opposed to that like these are maybe more so how do I define this? I guess like acts of consciousness that don't necessarily derive from a like deeper understanding of what the acts themselves mean in the greater context of the world. Yeah. So like one example is.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to lay an example that like cuckoo birds have been known to like start nests for other like birds of even other species, but it's not clear to me like whether or not they're doing that as more of like a biological response as opposed to Yeah, like an act of true altruism, if you will, or like of like a moral altruism.
Yeah, and I wouldn't know about that either. I don't know if animals are altruistic. I just think, well, no, actually, I do. I think they are altruistic in some senses, but then again, I don't know. Like they'll take care of babies of other species. You know,
Yeah,
I think that might be considered like an altruistic thing.
It's really weird because like then it gets into
but
like,
not all of them do that as well.
That's true. That's true.
I usually just say that like animals aren't moral agents, which is to say they can't conceptualize morality, but that they can certainly experience things like pleasure, pain, suffering, and other complicated processes like like child rearing, etc. Which is largely why I make a case for them when I consider my diet. But yeah, I don't know. I'd have to see more like. I'll even tell you, can animals, I don't know, experience moral morality? But, go on.
Google Andy.
Oh, I guess this is the important question. Animals possess a morality that allows them to tell the difference between right and wrong, according to a controversial new book. This is from the Telegraph. This is 2009. I don't know. Let's say I'll do a research review on this, and then we'll say until then, the jury's out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't even think the jury's in at all, but I don't know for sure. Yeah.
Hardwired morality is what it's talking about, is that there's an argument to be made for how they just have it like I don't know if I buy this shit. This sounds like some bullshit. We'll go to the Stanford Encyclopedia, the moral status of animals. Again, I do think that there's like an absolutely a difference between like us as moral agents versus animals as like thinking things, right? Like, and even plants to some extent, that like plants may have some I don't hesitate to say cognitive processes, but that they can have like some automatic responses that seem to come from some decision-making process. Like when a Venus flytrap closes in on a fly, that there's something that like triggered that response.
So those little hairs, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Well, if the hairs triggered it, then that's a biological response to a stimuli. But that is definitely not coming from any sense of like complex or like what would you call like abstract or like there's no mode there. There's just
conceptualization of right and wrong.
Yeah, definitely not
like a computer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was going to say, since on the roundtables topics, you had time. Is time a physics question or a philosophical question? Is it observable or created in our minds? But I think we know the answer to that. There's space-time. You can actually slow time down if you move through space-time fast enough. So I think it's a physics question, like by literal physical measurements. I think we just know that now.
So okay, first of all, these are like those are the topics from the first roundtable.
Okay. I gotcha.
I think you're in the first roundtable tab.
Probably.
There's a EP3 down at the bottom, and those are the ones. But yeah, we went over all. I'm welcome to talk about this one again because it's very interesting to me. And Wired and Simon know my like really dumb take that somehow works. Yeah, it's real dumb.
Multi-world shit?
But it works. Hey, look.
Does it?
I'm trying to change it, okay?
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out like a different justification. That is something that I actually want.
What was this topic? This is episode 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah. One sec.
This is why Synth went onto the whole split realities thing.
No, I don't need this
like
again.
It's the multiverse, right?
I don't need this again.
What was this? Which one was this? I missed.
This is time. The conversation we had about time.
Time, that's right. Fuck, I have to like jog my memory as to how we even got to the multiverse and shit. We were talking about.
I think I brought up time travel.
That's right. Fuck. Yeah.
And then I got very in depth very quick.
Yeah. Fuck. You guys talk. I don't. Yeah. Sorry. I'm gonna lose myself in the conversation.
Sure. So, what base you can actually? I don't know if time actually like exists independent of the human mind. like to be honest, like to kind of counter argue, I don't think that I don't think that we can know if time can exist independent of the human mind, specifically because we are temporal. Like we are temporal thinkers. We can't think atemporal. Like that doesn't work. There's no way in which we can conceptualize no time.
Wouldn't time be
know.
something that has to be experienced? Therefore, like, if you don't experience anything, I don't know. That's actually probably.
Actually, I mean, I would be really interested. I'd be really interested to see the like the completely no senses time experience, but never to be experienced. Apparently,
You can conceive of things that don't change, right? And then things that don't change are in a sense timeless and therefore eternal. Like math doesn't change. We learn about math.
No, don't go that way.
No, that's the way it is, though.
All right, no, that's not the way it is. So first thing you learn when you get into epistemology, actually, I guess technically you could learn about this in logic too. Math is invented by humans.
No.
But objectively, it is 100%.
How so?
Yeah,
it does not exist with outside the mind.
But what does?
So Berkeley and WiredGuitar would say no, nothing does. Everything is mind dependent. I would say so you could take there's this really cool guy XD named last year's your name on Twitch who has a very interesting. You probably know ANCAP amongst other things. This guy is I think he's a modal. There's different explanations for ontology. I take a mind-dependent approach. Everything exists and depends on the mind. He's a modal realist, and I looked into this when I found this.
Sure, I agree with you, by the way.
Yeah. Wait, what? No, you don't.
Wait, what?
Yes, I do.
You did not. No, you said math exists outside that we discovered math.
I think it's
no, you don't
realize.
No, because math is like our explanation how this stuff works, right? So like just because something follows the laws of what we would call math doesn't mean that math is what's making it do it. Math is just our explanation of why that happened.
I think math is I'm gonna use the word again, is a relationship. I think we understand it. It starts from one, and the one is the idea of something, right? And that's just an idea of anything. Like what is one?
I got you. So
It's something.
Berkeley argues that it is not possible for an idea to exist without a thinking mind.
Of course not. Yeah.
So math is an idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it cannot exist without the mind, right?
Okay.
So we did.
Yeah, that's true.
So by definition,
it's dependent.
And we had to have invented it, right? You can't discover something that.
So then there's only mind and there is nothing, and then there's nothing, again, right?
No, let me be clear. There's other explanations of this. This is just one of them. Yeah.
Okay. But we're appealing to this one.
I am, yeah. You can appeal to whatever you want. Again, hey, last year's your name on Twitch, ANCAP, by the way, dumb as fuck, by the way. He's a modal realist, so you can certainly you can look into that. I'm just kidding. I'm just saying this is where you've entered into the realm of philosophy. There's no one way to explain. Yeah, you've got Napoleon Bonaparte, established figure in history. Nobody really you can dispute like whether he's right or wrong, but nobody disagrees that he largely like influenced the French Revolution and all that good shit, right? In philosophy, you're entering into the world where like many worlds exist, right? There's many different ways to explain all of these complicated phenomena. So if you're asking me like, damn, everything you just said was true. Well, if you want to, you could look into this interesting explanation of
do you
ontology.
think that they're all equal?
So I would say no. Other people would say that.
Me too. So I'm not interested in ones that are irrelevant or potentially wrong, right?
Well, would you say I'm the smartest person on Twitch and realm of?
No, I wouldn't say that, but I still, like
well,
it.
I wasn't trying to trap you there. I just want to say, what I'm trying to say is you're not necessarily getting this from the most unbiased and supreme mind out there.
Of course.
Well, you say, of course, this is the entire point of me. Like, I'm not trying to act as a tutor, but I want you to explore these topics, because if I just sit here and tell you that, like, well, WiredGuitars says mind dependence of reality is like the only case of ontology, then I don't want you walking around saying, well, according to WiredGuitar, mind is the only source of knowledge, and it is where all ideas stem from.
Don't worry, I'll never say that. But no. Here's my contention with it is that to say that math is not a discovery, right, and that math is a creation because it doesn't exist outside of the mind. What does exist outside of the mind?
I would say nothing. Nothing.
Nothing. Okay, so then
Nothing.
our discoveries don't exist. Nothing has ever been discovered. Everything is a creation.
Think about the concept of a discovery. What is a discovery?
A discovery is something that is there to be. Well, I don't want to use the word in its own definition. I was going to say, is there to be discovered? It's something that is there prior to our awareness of it that we suddenly become aware of, or that we learn of.
Yeah, we learn of, we become aware of, right?
Right.
That it is that act of us, like discovering it, that makes it exist within, like the ideas or the existence of our minds, right?
Yeah, we become conscious of it. It's something that exists prior to our consciousness of it that we then become conscious of and learn.
Think about it this way also, like
yeah, I got to stipulate this. This is fundamental to like the explanation of mind-dependent reality. Is that your reality exists within your mind? Your concept of what a rock is does not exist. Like we take your mind out of the brain and we try to examine it. And maybe we'll get the tools for this in 1,000 years. But like we can't find right now, like, oh shit, this is the brain. This is the rock part of, like, this is the area of BrentoBox's brain that stored the picture of what a rock is. Let's see what a rock is in BrentoBox. Like these all exist within the mind, right? And they're observable and interpretable only through that mechanism. That like everything goes in through the mind, and that is like the way by which we're imagining these things. What other explanation for these things is there? I suppose outside of the mind is kind of the question that we'd be interested in asking and answering.
Right. Yeah. I guess I just think if math isn't a discovery, I don't know what would be. Then that just means discoveries don't exist. Nothing is discovered. Everything is created.
Let's be clear. You can like so say we're like some 5,000 or 6,000 feet into the Earth's core right now in terms of the lowest. I saw a video on this that like maybe you guys seen it too. It's kind of relaxing. It's like 5 minutes long and explains like how far into the Earth that we've drilled into, and we hit like a tectonic plate that we can't get past. Let's say we get we acquire new tools or a better drill to get past that plate. And we keep drilling more towards, we're on the crust right now, so we get towards the inner layers. Let me look at the layers of the Earth. I'm sure you guys don't really care, right?
Mantle is the next.
And we've barely fucking touched it either.
Yeah, we barely touched the crust.
Let's say we discover a new element within there, right? I use that chief word discover, right? That we discovered that element is that what we have done there is we've seen something, processed it within our mind, and anytime, especially when we're looking at it, but anytime we're explaining it to somebody else, we're only explaining that idea, right? When we're looking at it, we're only looking at that idea. We're not looking at the raw objective material. We're looking and interpreting what we see through our mind. Yeah, like for that thing to exist, like to I suppose us, like that it need be through the mind, that like without the mind we cannot like
and that's what I'm saying. 100% agree with you on that. But
I think a good way to put it is like if we discover like what Wired was saying, like a new element or something, right? Basically everything he said. But with something like math, there's no like, it's not just factually, like for instance, we could do like base 10 is what we do in our math, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it starts over from there. All of math could work perfectly fine if we choose any other base number. If we choose base 27, you could still, it wouldn't work in the same way that it does now. You'd have to adjust everything, but you could still make all the math work with like a different base number. Whereas like an element like, I don't know, hydrogen will always only have like one electron?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Like we have discovered that one thing is like this, and math is, okay, here's what we see, and here's our interpretation of how to explain that.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. But so my thing is like, if you think about pi, right? You think about like the food circumference of a circle over the diameter.
Yes.
It's always 3.4. So if you want to say like, oh, well, let's use base 27. It doesn't matter. The relationship will forever be 3.14 back into fucking infinity. Yeah, like now, if you want to use different symbols or use different words, you can do that. But it will never ever be anything but that.
But
that's pi.
Is the fact that we represent like what pi is, because pi is the circumference of a circle, right?
Over the diameter, yeah.
The diameter, right? So just because that we have said that we have found like a mathematical truth, right? That like this always holds. That doesn't mean that like our interpretation of like representing that to each other is like a discovery. I mean, maybe you could say that like that certain piece of math like is a discovery because we have noticed that this is the same, but that doesn't mean that like all of math in itself is technically a discovery. Like it could it's basically, I would say it's our way of explaining things, right? So just because it's saying like our way of explaining something works, that doesn't mean that the explanation for the discovery is itself discovery.
I mean, like if you want to say like the symbols and the system are arbitrary or man-made, sure, that's true. But like the relationship of a circumference to the diameter, it is always 3.14 back, and we call it pi. We can call it cake if you want. Doesn't fucking matter. But that's what it is.
Is
like,
solely just the fact that like a certain calculation for a or how do I put this? Is the fact that a circle will always have, this relationship to its circumference, is that fact inherently mathematical? Like, is the fact that like if I throw a ball at a certain trajectory, that the ball will interact with like the air and interact with gravity in a way that it will land at this certain spot, is that actual act itself mathematics? Because you could break everything down into mathematics that way.
Yes, you're right. I think you can break everything down to mathematics. I would say like the ability to understand the relationships in the world in that manner is mathematics, not necessarily whether it's base 10 or base 27. That's a system.
Yeah,
but mathematics would be the relationship.
Yeah,
that's our interpretation. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the chief. I mean, math works for sure, but that it exists solely within our minds, and that it is something that like we have developed is, I guess, the main point of like the mind-dependent reality memers here.
Yeah, true.
I think I did a poor job of explaining this like new element that we discover, so to speak.
Sure.
When I say that we discover it, I'm not, and when I'm using like words like invent to describe our relationship to mathematics, let me be clear. I'm not saying that like if all humans are wiped off the face of the earth simultaneously tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that suddenly like the world disappears or the sun disappears or everything disappears. I'm not like so egotistical to assume that like everything exists and only with so long as at least one human is around to interpret it. What I'm really saying is that the way by which we operate in the world is purely through the mind. That when we see something, well, we're seeing it with our eyes, and that is sending information to our brain, right? And we do not see that any other way. If we do not have our eyes to give us that information to our brain, then we've lost firstly, I think like 80% of our information comes from our eyes. So we've lost a very valuable piece of information. But then also that any other way by which we interpret that thing in the world, in this case, like a new element, say it's a rock or like rock-like substance, need come from some other sense or from some other conception. So Berkeley described 3 ways by which we could perceive things. Again, I'm using things. I hope that's like good enough. Like it could be anything, literally anything.
Thing is a good word.
Yeah. Okay. Good. For this particular conversation, I think thing is like as specific as I can get, because it's literally anything that you can think of, be it math, like the concept of math, or a rock is being transcode. I shouldn't use that word. It's being like, like you're interpreting that purely through the mind, not through some other state of being or some other
consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's true. And I mean, that's why I'm saying I'm in agreement. Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Nice.
And when I was speaking, we go back over it. I was going to say that I just think that the relationship that we describe through mathematics, pi, circle, circumference, diameter, is an inherent relationship, and that's what I refer to when I'm referring to mathematics. Like so. Yeah.
By the way, I made a jab at Les. I've never talked to this guy. I don't know if he's a dumbass. I looked into motorcycles and was like, man, this is some crazy shit.
He's the last Discord I've joined recently. I can't even remember how or when I joined it necessarily, but
I think they had a debate with Kira recently, Kira Husk, on anarcho-capitalism versus anarcho-communism. So I know maybe that was how you found out about their streamer.
That's an interesting. Sounds like an interesting convo.
Yeah.
I don't know who came out on top. I didn't watch it. I didn't watch it.
I'm gonna step away 1 second. Be right back.
There you go.
Man, that Brento guy.
I actually like Brento. I think Brento's the last solid conservative on Twitch.
At one point, I was like, during Micro and Brento like talking to each other, I was like, we're literally just letting the beginners like duke it out. This is awesome.
I was having fun with it.
It was great.
Yeah, shit. This has been very productive. Just keep getting better and better.
Oh yeah.
Actually, Synth, maybe you should look into modal realism. You read it, and it's by David Kellogg Lewis. States that all possible worlds are real in the same way as is the actual world. They are of a kind with this world of ours. This is something to look at.
Actually, wait. I'm a modal realist.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
So it even states right here the term possible world. To note, however, though the concept does sound similar to modern notions of the multiverse, in reality, these two concepts are quite distinct because a multiverse, would constitute a single possible world. And I don't. So, like, the idea of a modal realism is that, like, there can be different, I guess, different worlds, right? That, like, all exist simultaneously. I don't know. I didn't know the multiverse precluded that. I'm
Hell yeah! You know what? I'm gonna look into this.
It's like, yeah.
This is gonna be some real dumb shit.
It's an explanation of ontology, right? So automatically, it's incredibly fucking stupid.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I mean, again, mind-dependent reality is an explanation of ontology by definition. So I can't shit on it too much. All these are. We're just trying to explain our own topic.
I think the maths conversation that we just had is a good analogy for our realism conversations we've had, actually.
I think so too, yeah.
I was just thinking about that.
There's a lot of crossover, for sure. Actually, Simon, we didn't get to hear your opinions. Do you think maths was discovered or invented?
I agree with the mind dependent thing, like, completely with everything, but I don't think that has any bound on whether we're realism or not. I don't know.
You're so close. No, you're so close. You're just right there. As long as you can accept that our concepts of things exist within the mind, then you can see how the mind is necessarily faulty, right? At times, and that, like, we should be skeptical of it always, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, or maybe not always.
I don't think that makes me an anti-realist, though.
Yeah, sorry. Not that we should be skeptical of it always, but there's just that we should never rely on it as a purveyor of knowledge, right? Because knowledge is, like, the supreme. Like, when we make a knowledge claim, it's like, man,
I agree.
We know this.
But where
does the observable universe? It's like, can we ever know that? Are you sure?
But if all things are known in the mind, knowledge, how do we? What do we appeal to as knowledge if not what we know with our minds?
We don't. So we're going through all the.
That's where the disagreement lies.
It's just. I mean, like, it's. What is knowledge if you can't know it?
I would say knowledge is a farce. We can't know anything. Personally, I would say that we have systems of belief that we construct mostly based off of.
But you don't know that, right?
So let me be clear about this.
Sure.
That is my belief, right? I definitely do not know it, and ultimately I take a null position on knowledge claims, and this, like, betrays the principle of bivalence if you look into logic. Yeah, and I think Synth still agrees. Synth, we're still in agreement on this one, right?
Yes, we're still
absolutely.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That there's a null claim being made in this conversation, and I think Simon tries to really, like, weasel us into the no claim, like, or the false claim. Is like, oh, I'm saying we can't know it. No, I'm not saying we can't anything. I'm just saying I'm skeptical of any claim being made on knowledge always, because just because of that. Like, I
understand what you mean.
Yeah. Hopefully makes sense.
Well, I was just saying, because the conversation relies on, are you a realist or not? Not whether what fringe of anti-realism you're a part of. It's just literally that question alone. It's just, are you anti-realist? Are you a realist, sorry? And if you reply no, then that's what our conversation was.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it feels kind of slimy maybe to do this, but, like, I don't appeal to the, like, principle of bivalence on this one. I don't think that a statement is either, like, true or false in this particular case. I think that we can that we have a lack of knowledge, like, that we cannot go through the dialectic method on this particular matter ever. Or I usually now I just say, like,
that's a different position. I think that's a way different position than before. I don't think depending on whether it's true or false isn't contingent on whether you know it or not.
No,
we have been saying
because a logical claim of true and false isn't the same of whether you know it or not epistemically.
I agree. This is going to derail into this.
I swear we've been saying the exact same thing the entire time, though, is that we've always been stating that like there is a null position here that we adhere to when it comes
I don't think there is
Correct.
a null position on
Yes.
a logical claim.
a knowledge claim, and that you're
On a knowledge claim,
stating
there
that
is. I agree.
Yeah, and so again, we largely agree on most things here. I do believe that logic is the highest like principle of belief. That like if
We agree
that there's
with that.
that there is no superseding logic as a foundation of
Mm-hmm.
of a system of belief. But that like
Right.
I don't go that step further to be like therefore knowledge is logic or logic is knowledge. You go that extra step to say therefore logic is knowledge.
No.
And I've always
I
see a
evaluate
missing link
knowledge with logic.
I see.
That's why it's not contingent on me. Is because it's well, it's true or false whether knowledge exists or not. That's what realism is. It's a position on whether knowledge has a truth value or not. That's what all realisms are. That's what moral realism is. Is that if moral statements have a true or false value to it. That's what error theory is, right? Is that all moral statements are false. That would be a position on that.
There's like deviations. So like Mackie doesn't necessarily say that they're all false, and Rem I think.
Well, yeah.
I think Rem mischaracterizes them by stating that. Mackie never stated that they're all false. He just stated that like one cannot be sure that one is objectively true. Or
Yeah.
false.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's issue I guess you could say I take with Rem that like I would have to conversate with him on.
Would you disagree with someone saying that something is objective is something that is like logically true?
Sorry?
If I said that something that is objective is something that is logically true, would you agree with or disagree with that?
So generally speaking, I use words like objective and I use words like knowledge just because I'm never this deep into the weeds of a conversation on this topic with anybody. Like usually I'm more concerned with like just kind of constructing a framework of doubt that I can use to operate with like laymen, right? But in this particular context, no, I would say we cannot know if anything is objectively true. We cannot know if anything is objectively true. We can believe, right?
Okay, the reason why I probe that is that something that is... Wait, I don't even remember what my question was now. Wait, something that is objective is something that is true, right? Is that what I said? Yeah, okay. I wouldn't consider something that is objective is something that is like logically true or false. I would say that there's like a position on epistemology. So whether you know it or not. So like the math example that we brought up before, which is why we're here, is that pi exists within... the pi as the discovery exists within the concept of maths. So with analogy to that, so something that is objective is something that exists within like a framework of epistemology. That was the whole conversation. That's why I agree with the mind dependent bit. It's because I don't know how to even start making the argument for the independent bit, but yeah. That's why I can hold. That's why I think I'm still looking into it. I think I can still hold things like moral realism, but be like a subjectivist, because I can say that the concept of it can exist, and I can be I think from what I've looked at, I think I align with like a cognitivist view, but I can still say that, well, within the subjectivist conversation, which I distinguish from the realist conversation, that I can be subjectivist and still a realist. Because I don't know if I can, because of like the epistemic realism being like, I don't think I can talk about it without being a realist in the first place, and it mean anything.
All right. Firstly, when you say you're an objectivist, we need to like differ something. Are you like an Ayn Rand objectivism? Is that what we're talking about here, or like what do you mean when you're saying objectivist?
I haven't read her, so if give me the rundown of what she means by that.
Yeah. Are you? Well, no. It doesn't sound like you even subscribe to that. I'm just when you say you're an objectivist, this is particularly on the topic of
that would be the mind independence question. So exists without a human mind would be the subjectivist. I think.
Yeah.
That's where I would be subjectivist because of the mind independent. Yeah. I doubt the mind independence bit.
Yep. But that you think that the mind in and of itself is powerful enough to make knowledge claim.
Within the framework of epistemology, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like I'm comfortable making this disagreement with you. I don't think we need to like share blood or spill blood over it.
We're good. I loved that conversation. We were so civil to each other, and I really like that.
Yeah, it was a good conversation. I mean, again, I largely disagree with you, but yeah, it's not a big deal.
You're gonna have to hold
Probably
each
more
other's throats.
wholesome than our conversations, to be honest.
You should go through our DMs.
I think I
Wired.
yelled at
Oh.
Simon quite a bit. I think. Wait. Did we both yell? I feel like we both did, but
I think you riled me a little by the end of it. That's why I got a little angry.
Yeah.
We're alright though. Sorry.
We're all friends, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're here now.
Sorry.
Right?
I'm gonna
I feel like
derail.
making a,
My bad.
fuck. I don't even know what to make. I was gonna make like a cut a liberal fascist bleeds like philosophy joke, but in the same sense.
Cut an anti-realist and or
A realist bleeds or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Cut a metaphysical anti-realist and the anti-realist. Like, this motherfucker says that knowledge claims can't be known for sure, but like I have never seen WiredGuitars try to jump off a cliff and see if he can't suddenly levitate. Is that what you're trying to say?
A little bit.
Oh, it's not though. Dude, systems of belief can guide action just as, I wouldn't say it's just, but like almost as justly as a knowledge claim, right? We can all acknowledge that. Somebody can believe in God so much so that they like do everything in the Bible, right? Like you can use systems of belief to justify action almost as well, if not as well as you can statements of knowledge. So and just to, again, to be really clear about this, outside of the context of this conversation, I do use words like no. I try not to recently, just to switch up my vernacular, but I do use those words just because they do mean something else to most people. And when I say something else, what I mean is people don't actually know what these words mean, and they think that they know what they mean. So like I subscribe to, I guess, their vernacular to hopefully like kind of like, join the conversation. Cause I'm not going to sit there talking to somebody who's like, you know what, man, systemic racism is fucking bullshit, dude. That's some bullshit. I know that shit is so bullshit. And I'm like, well, wait, how can you be sure that you know it's bullshit? Are you sure you don't believe that it's bullshit? Like, I'm not going to sit there and, like try to pin him down to the semantics of it. I'm just gonna be like, yeah, dude, it's just some bullshit as well. I
think
agree.
it's bad. What the hell is bad? Oh my god, what's
yeah. Or even in the context of that,
bad?
like, I'm not gonna apply error theory to be like, well, can you actually really say it's bad? Like,
Yeah.
no, it's some bullshit, and it's not me sacrificing or like forfeiting my values in any way, shape, or form. Because again, skeptic when it comes to morals, skeptic when it comes to metaphysical, to believing in metaphysical beliefs, or sorry, in believing in like metaphysical truths or metaphysical knowledge of the world. But I do believe we can have strong systems of belief, like that we can have, like, again, you can get into the Gettier thing of like, justified true belief that is a way better account for knowledge than something like an unjustified false belief. So I do believe that there can be like a stronger account of belief than another one or multiple ones. Yeah. But that's like
Stronger account of belief.
Yeah, and let me be clear again. I'm not the only person that said this. Like, you can read
That's
Edmund
fine,
Gettier.
that's
Yeah. Not the only reason. The reason I state that is to demonstrate that there is some not scientific. It's fucking philosophy.
Sure.
There's some academic substantiation for this as well. So the Gettier problem, or the term Gettier problem or Gettier case, it's sometimes used to describe any case in the field of epistemology that purports to repudiate the JTB account of knowledge. So he's had some pushback on this, and I'm not beholden to specifically the Gettier explanation of a stronger account of belief that could account for knowledge. I don't even believe that a justified true belief can account for knowledge, but I do believe that a justified true belief is, for instance, better than an unjustified or false belief. Like if somebody just says, hey, you know what, like I hate black people because they suck through straws up their nose. It's like, damn, dude, that's not justified whatsoever. That's false. And you believe that. Like that's an interesting little belief.
Wait, but God told me that. What do you mean?
And again, like even just like a belief in God, right? Like that's ecclesiastic. I don't necessarily think that like anybody should. I mean, I wouldn't say that you shouldn't believe in God, but I'm just saying that like when it comes to making strong belief claims, I do not believe that one should do so off the presupposition of God. If that makes sense. And yeah, like this guy, this person in chat, Wired seems to know a lot, but we can't know anything. I mean, that's a meme, but like, yeah, fuck. To a very small extent. Yeah, like I'm not gonna sit here and start, like, don't get me wrong, right? If I ever get in a debate with somebody like a public figure like Noam Chomsky and he starts pushing me in a corner on something, I'm not gonna suddenly appeal to this and be like, you know what? I've been saving this.
We don't know anything.
We don't know anything. Like, I'm not gonna do that. Yeah, because I would, of course, I would of course forfeit to their system of belief if I was challenged in such a way that made me think, man, my system is inferior to theirs. But then that inferiority is only, it's only in relation to things like logic. It's that I've constructed this belief based on my adherence to the principles of very basic and foundational principles of logic, from which all other belief claims and even knowledge claims, even if they're made unfairly, stem from. Right? Is that everything? Most things. That's very vague. Most systems of academia stem from logic, stem from our application of this rigorous process that we've used. And yeah, I got my hands out. Okay, fuck you, Micro.
He can't hear you.
and that yeah, I'm doing the Bernie.
Bernie.
Yeah. That's unfair, right? That like, oh man, Wired, what you're basically saying is we can just refute anything because we can't know anything.
Exists.
Yeah, yeah. I would not actually say that. Like, I'm not. That's
Actually, that's basically my argument. It's summed up. That's basically my argument, isn't it? Really, you seem to know a lot, but you can't know anything. Apparently, that's kind of the rundown.
Yeah.
Bad faith of you, I guess, but yeah.
No. In some ways, that was your chief counter argument, right? It was like, okay, let's just assume for a second the metaphysical anti-realist is correct and that we can't know any metaphysical truths. Therefore, why would we believe the metaphysical anti-realist that their truth claim is this? And again, I really want to stress,
question, man.
No, but that's not. Again, that is the. And Synth has my back on this. That is the Babby answer to this, because that is not my position. My position is not that we cannot know. My position. Okay. My position is not that we know that we cannot know. My position is that I'm skeptical that we can ever say we know. That is my position.
But that's not even a position.
That is a
non-position.
What type of claim is skepticism?
Yeah, so let me be clear. This does not adhere to the principle of bivalence. So if you're gonna like try to apply logic to firstly, you are applying a tautological system to explain your own system. You're saying knowledge. Look, Wired. Obviously, we can know things. And how do I know things? Because logic. And how do I know that logic works? Because it's logic.
Well, you're speaking of a conversation of philosophy, and that's the foundation of philosophy. Unless you don't want to talk about philosopher, which is then a completely different conversation.
Hold on.
Again, let's be clear. Again, the very a skeptical claim here is not me like weaseling out or anything like that. Like,
I'm not saying you're weaseling out.
Well, I wouldn't say you're weaseling out, but I do think that at a certain point, people engaging in skepticism are appealing almost to like a denialism, and they're just being like, "Well, we just can't know." It's almost like a refusal to engage. Like,
all right.
I'm not saying that's what you mean to do, but I have spoken to people who've just gone to the skeptical point, and they're just like, but we just it's like what you said you wouldn't do with Dawkins. I believe you wouldn't do, but I've spoken to people who do that, and then you're just like, well, then what the fuck are we doing? And they're just, well, that's it, and it's like, bye, okay.
I'll give you two things. Firstly, I promise to never ever do this to anybody, especially you, if I ever debate anything regarding anything other than this. Secondly, if anybody starts saying, well, Wired taught me that I don't have to believe anything, because I don't have to know that I can't know anything, then I will denounce that fucker, okay? Because that is not the point of this position. This position is purely my rejection of epistemic claims ever, right? That's all this is to say I love epistemology, love engaging in it, just like I do ethics. But largely, I regard it as a farce. Like, we can't truly know these kinds of things, so to speak. And I'm using things very vaguely. Hopefully,
I know.
These subjects are not subjects that we can claim to know things on. And then likewise, again, very loosely, if anybody starts using this against you, well, Brento, you see, Brento, I was watching the Philosophia podcast, and it seems to be Wired had trumped on this. No, we can have stronger systems of belief, and we can engage in debate. We can still use logic as a tool. It's just that to claim that it's ever strong enough to make a knowledge claim is what I take issue with, because knowledge, by definition of what knowledge is, it is unchanging, right? It's something that we know about the universe.
Right. Knowledge doesn't change.
Yeah.
I would disagree.
The knowledge, you would say knowledge can change?
Well, yeah.
You mean like you can learn?
I don't think it can logically change. So like a statement is either true or false within the context of like a state of affairs, but knowledge isn't bound by that same sort of like it's very hard to word it, but
within go ahead.
No, you can carry on. I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if most people necessarily I agree with you, Wired, but I don't know if most people necessarily think of the concept of knowledge as being something that is truly unchanging. Like, I don't know if that's a quality that they apply to the concept of knowledge, but I do agree with you. That's what I think defines knowledge, is that it's true and unchanging. It's the way it is now, it's the way it will be. It's known.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Yeah, and then if something were like, I hesitate to even say if something were to change about it, but rather if something were to happen to that thing that we say we know, that would change it, then we would assimilate that knowledge. Like I see that there is a potential for somebody to say like, well, Wired, you're trying to say that like something like the theory of gravity, it was unchanging or something like that. But all I'm really trying to state here is that, like, to make a knowledge claim about anything, any period, right, is to state that like that thing is observable in such a way that we can guarantee it works that way, 100%, no discussion, right? That we know 2 + 2 = 4. There's just no dispute on that, right? I would argue, again, it sounds really weird. I'm taking the really hard position to, like, it's going to sound weird as I say it, but I would argue we can't know that.
I would say that would be a logically true statement, but not a knowledge
I would agree
claim.
with that. Yeah, I would agree.
Okay.
Well, I would agree with that too. Yeah. Truth and logic, and it's not like I would say it's not a knowledge claim.
Yes. Yeah, that's I would say there's a distinction between that, which is why I would make like a logical basis for my realism. That's that's exactly why I would do that.
Before you do that, though, let's agree to yes, yeah.
We don't have to go down it again if you don't want to. It's okay.
Yeah. No, because I agree with you that like that is a logically consistent and truthful claim that I do not believe we can know.
Oh, okay. I remember an example. So I could be told, like, yesterday, right? Someone, what's his name? Sheepdog called you a Nazist communist, right? I could have never have heard of you before, but that would be knowledge of what Wired is to me. That wouldn't be necessarily true or false to me, but it would be some knowledge that I have of you.
Oof. So, okay, come again one more time. I'm sorry.
So I could be told that WiredGuitars is a Nazi communist.
Yeah.
As Sheepdog said yesterday. That would be knowledge I have on WiredGuitars.
Did he really call me a Nazi communist? Wait,
that's what he said yesterday. Yeah, that was pretty funny. A communist Nazi. It was one way around. It was pretty funny though.
Okay, sorry.
But that would be knowledge I have of you if I'd never met you or never seen you on a roundtable before. Not saying that would be true or false logically, but that would be knowledge that I have of you.
Definitely not. I would say that that's a belief that you have of me. That to claim that that's knowledge is well. Firstly, that's a. I love this example because like I think this really illustrates my point. Is like when people say I know you're this, it's like, dude, you don't know anything about anybody. Like to know anything about anybody's universe is incredibly difficult as a claim to make. Think about Brento, right? I've seen some of Brento's streams and I see him often on roundtables, especially leftist ones. Oddly enough, despite his political leanings. I see so little of BrentoBox the person. I don't even know his name, right? I don't know what his day job is. You don't need to tell me, by the way. I'm just saying there's so little of BrentoBox that I wouldn't even make the claim no, but either way, there's so much about Brento that I do not, I guess, I use the word no here as like a misnomer. Like I wouldn't even say no, but there's so much information about Brento that I do not have access to. To ever say I know anything about Brento is incredibly farce from the get-go. Just by like,
right.
Again, by.
But you know he owns red headphones, right?
Sure. Well, no. What do you mean? I know some things, and what did you say?
You know, I stream on Twitch.
I wouldn't. I would definitely state something like, man, you know, I believe he streams on Twitch, but like, how do I really know that? Like, how do I know that my eyes aren't deceived? Like, we can get back on the metaphysical anti-realism of like how my qualia, my ontology could be failing me, or you know, consistently failing me, et cetera, et cetera. Like but either way,
it sounds like what you would call knowledge is what I would call like the dichotomy of if it's true or false. So. There is a knowledge of me saying he's on Twitch, and then there is an actual fact of the matter if he's on Twitch or not. I think they would be two separate types of claims, and I think what you think is knowledge would be what I would be call my like logic, a logical conclusion.
Logical, yeah. Well, then I would just call that like a belief, right? Like I believe Brento streams on Twitch. I don't know that.
Yeah, that would be the knowledge type claim.
Yeah.
But like whether it's true or false or not is a different question. Like, it's true or false that you have a red ball, but it doesn't matter whether I know you have a red ball or not to whether it is the case that you have a red ball.
Yeah. Okay, again, so, like, what is the concept of red? Like, what makes that ball red? Yeah. You see where I'm
no.
going? No. This is important. This is the route that I always go to whenever people try to pin me down. Like, well, what about gravity, Wired? Like, you know, gravity exists, right? Like, we at least know that. Well, it's like, motherfucker, how do you experience gravity, right? It's largely you don't even necessarily know if you do, right? Because it's like something that is kept constant your entire life. But assuming, you know, obviously we have physicists that are way smarter than I do that have confirmed its existence in some capacity, right? But is that right? Like, how do we know? How do we claim these statements to be without a matter of doubt, right? Like, we experience it like through our touch, through our feel, like, and that has failed us before, right? You've been numb before in some parts of your body if you've gotten shots to provide some level of anesthetic. What even is your experience as a human being? It's fundamentally different than like every single other person's to some extent, right? It seems
My
like
response to
especially
that would be that we just have different fields of philosophy to investigate those questions.
And what, like, and parse out the truth claims to them?
Well, if we're going to talk about the truth claims, then we have to talk about logic. If we want to talk about knowledge claims, we want to talk about epistemology. If we want to talk about experiential claims, then we want to talk about ontology. If we want to talk about moral claims, we talk about morality. Yeah.
And again, like, I'd say that it's totally fair to explore like every topic on the bookshelf for evaluating like the dialectics of the conversation. Like, is it true or false? Like, well, we can experience, or we can demonstrate this through like some propositional logic, or we could just try to like observe the universe and use things like double-blind control studies to, you know, reach a rather good account or a rather good system of belief to determine these things. But largely, when it comes to like, man, I know that thing, I always bite the bullet. I'm like, man, we can't know it. You know, it's like, we're close maybe, but I don't even know if that's the case, because what would we be close to? How would we know if we're close to it or not? This is why, again, I largely just appeal to time. I say that like, maybe it's entirely possible that at some point we can like experience the end, or like reach the end of the universe, and also disprove the multiverse at the same time as disproving God's existence. If we can do all of these things, I'd be much more comfortable saying that like maybe we could know things. But until we, again, I'll use the Descartes shitty method, or the Descartes shitty arguments here, right? Like, how do you not know that there's not I know. So Simon's grinning at this, but like, how do you know, and I'm hearing an echo of myself, that there's not a malevolent God out there trying to deceive your reality right now, right?
Yeah,
how do you know? Yeah, you don't know. And the deception that this God could be playing, the deception lengths that this God could be going to like completely fuck your reality. Well, you don't know the boundaries of them. So what if like right now, every time you think you're touching your table and you think you're touching wood, that God, that malevolent God out there is like altering your sensory perceptions to experience something completely different? How do you know that he's not doing that?
Well,
right.
My response to that would be, I don't epistemically know the correct answer, but I would, by principles of logic, say that there is a right answer. It's just that I don't epistemically know the correct answer.
Yeah, what's the correct answer through epistemic?
Well,
reason?
The epistemic answer for me would be I don't know I don't know the right answer to that. I don't know if there is a God. I don't know the answer to solipsism and things like that. But I would still be a realist.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, the ultimate thing is like, if you're putting forward this proposition, it's like, what if you're being deceived out of reality? And ultimately, like, Simon, your answer I think is the right one. You're like, well, even if I'm being deceived so that I can't like perceive reality or understand it, reality still logically exists by its own definition, that I'm being deceived about it. So therefore, like, even if I don't know the truth is still there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I thought you meant, and I agree. Yeah, I think truth exists in that sense, even if you don't understand it. So that would be the right answer. You know,
I need to like read more into truth, if that, as weird as that sounds, because I do actually believe there could be like a truth that extends beyond knowledge, if that makes sense. Like, I think we can have like a true or
I agree with that. Unless it be a logical truth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I don't know if it could extend beyond knowledge. I think it would have to certainly be a part of knowledge.
I would say extend below knowledge. I would say that like we can have truths that are like a step below knowledge. Like, we can have a system of belief, and within that system of belief, we can have true or false statements.
I see.
Like, and I would apply logic to that. I would say logic is the chief of the systems of belief, and that like all of the, say, natural sciences extend below that. But that, like, again, with science, I see Simon nodding. Simon and I are like so close on this. It's just that I don't take the second jump this Simon does. Simon will take that jump of stating, okay, yes, logic is the we'll say logic is the penultimate statement of belief. Once you can establish something logically, you can then make the jump.
I don't know if I agree with that. I'm just arguing within the framework of that. So to have conversations of philosopher, I would have to talk about logic. I'd have to talk about epistemology. That's all I would be saying. Within the context of the conversation we're having, I'd have to grant those. That's what the like the a priori stuff or the necessary belief stuff comes in.
Well, yeah, but so these are your presuppositions, right? That like logic is true and that it's a just account for knowledge, and that
I wouldn't.
How can you even?
I can't justify logic as true, so I wouldn't make that claim.
Wait, if you can't justify logic as true, then where we are?
No, because that would be a necessary condition to make the statement that it isn't true, or that I have an absence of it being true or false.
Again, I'm a skeptic. And saying
why would you need logic to know logic is false?
Logic has to justify itself. Like, how are you gonna prove logic false without logic? That's the point.
Okay, so
yeah. It's called a tautology, by the way.
It'd be trying to like say that math doesn't exist while using maths.
Yeah.
It would make no sense because your argument would use the very thing you're trying to disprove.
Yeah.
So it's either the argument is false, or your argument is correct, and therefore it is false. It doesn't really make any sense to make the argument.
Actually, you know what?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? No. I have a question. Okay, so if we find a different system that can actually analyze logic and say that logic is false, will you accept that logic is false?
Well, this is where I think I agree with where me and Wired finished our conversation was that I don't know if he's going to actually do it, but I'm not going to like hold it to him. But he said he was going to like write out in a 25-page thing, right? Is where I would love to see another system that explains the same sort of things, that doesn't adhere to like the same conditions that I would use to make statements. But it seems like you'd have to like it seems like a lot of legwork in the first place. I'm not saying it's not possible to do so. Obviously not, because I'd love to see what Wired writes up. That'd be a fucking good read. But that's a big task.
Those are fighting words. That's all I hear are fighting words. It's like, man, that's really hard to do. It's like, dude,
I would love to read it. I'm ready, dude.
Yeah.
I love to be proven wrong. I want to know another philosopher. If we can do like Philosophy 2, Electric Boogaloo, that'd be sick. Cool. If if it explains things better, absolutely, I'm on board with it.
Philosophy 2.
No. I'll say it right
Please
now.
call it that. If you come up with it, please call it.
Please actually do philosophy.
I just need to be a little bit more clear. I don't recall myself saying that I have a better account for logic. I do remember supposing.
No, I didn't say you said that. No, I didn't recognize that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that you were gonna write something out that said that could explain all that. Possibly.
Yes, that was. Insofar as knowledge claims are made, again, I still hold the position that like we cannot make those statements, that we can make strong accounts of belief to I guess like mirror, and mirror is even a farce in this conversation, that we can like use to reach like an asymptote, a state of truth that is like close enough to knowledge to where it's like it's almost identical. It's like even assuming a god is like playing tricks on us, like at this point, like fuck all this shit. We're so far removed to making these sorts of justifications now. Like again, in the case of like explaining to somebody, hey, like, systemic racism exists. Here's a meta-analysis of over 100 studies that have been peer-reviewed litigiously and all engage in some or in all use double-blind control studies to represent that like it exists. We know it exists. The systems that are racist against Black people even came out and said, yeah, we're racist. What the fuck of it? Like every sign points to this being the case. And somebody wants to say something like, well, what if systemic racism doesn't exist because nothing exists and it's all just our brains are actually in a vat right now, or like we're all connected to the singularity of the matrix and like all of reality doesn't exist. It's like, again, it's like, motherfucker, just leave. Like that's not what this is for. That's not the reason why I bring these arguments up. Like this is not what I'm talking about when I say that like knowledge is not something we can achieve. Because again, you have a very strong account of belief that you're presenting to somebody who's trying to be the ultimate skeptic on features of the world that we can right now, I would say, have a pretty good account for how they interact, right? Again, things like gravity, things like inertia, we can have pretty good accounts for those things, and they remain pretty constant. I do still adhere here to the problem of induction rather, that states that, like, there is necessarily always that question of, like, how can we know what will happen in the future? How can we? And I encourage you guys to read more Hume if you're curious curious on that topic. I don't know if I did a good job of explaining it earlier or even now. But that, like, these arguments are not meant for conservatives or liberals to use when they're pinned to a corner and just be like, yeah, you know what? Clearly you did your homework. Clearly you're better at the dialectic method than I am. You have a much better account for the world than I do. But, like, fuck it, I'm just going to refer to this vague bullshit, like, ultimate skepticism to win the argument. Ultimately,
Yeah, right.
And like, no, like, fuck that, dude. Like, I'm operating from frameworks of doubt all the time. In that, like, when I wake up in the morning, I mean, I don't literally say this out loud, but I'm I'm proving that at the very least I woke up. That that there's another. I think Hume would say you would put another tally mark on the board of, like, 1,000 to 50 tally marks or some shit like that every time you wake up. It's like you can never know that you won't wake up tomorrow morning, but you add another one to the tally mark. It's just like
what's 1,000 worth if one isn't worth anything? Really?
Oof.
What's 1,000 tally marks worth if one tally mark isn't worth anything?
Hume didn't literally write on that, by the way. He's mostly
no, I know, but it's a fair question.
But yeah, what you're saying is, like, one day there might be, or one day there may be, it may be the case that I won't wake up and then I won't be able to, like, not mark a tally. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm more speaking generally. There's probably a very good answer to this. I don't know, maybe you have it. But just like when people say on Twitch, and it's fair when they go, like, anecdote is not data. And it's like, okay, sure, but all data is technically just a collection of anecdotes. It's each person's individual experience. So if one person's individual experience isn't worth anything, what's 1,000 individual experiences worth? 1,000 nothings?
My girlfriend's getting pissed. I'm gonna let you guys take this one. It was fun as always. I love you guys. Brento, I will be here next week.
I gotta go. But you were saying, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say we'll definitely talk about this some other time, and definitely we're gonna keep the podcast going. So hopefully you keep joining. I love these conversations so much. So please never stop doing them. And
this is a lot of fun.
Yeah, Micro, I hope that you don't feel excluded. Like, I feel like we've been talking for the last.
Yeah,
I've been enjoying it. I actually was on the phone with my girlfriend for a little bit too, so we've been enjoying it. I've been enjoying it. Like I said, I'm here to, like, learn as much as I am to, like, engage. Probably more to learn than, like, engage, really. And like I said, hopefully I can help, like, speak for audience members that may or may not, like, have the same level of understanding as well, that are coming here to, like, learn as well.
We're all learners.
Yeah, or not speak for, but represent those people, I guess I should say. Yeah, it's fun. I really enjoy this a lot.
Good shit. Well, hey, I love you guys. Okay.
Me too, man.
You too. Take it easy.
Yeah, good talking to you, dude.
Stay wide.
Yeah. Good talking to you.
Oh, man. Ooh, look at this beautiful 4-panel. Awesome.
Oh yeah,
It's perfect.
Yeah. I was saying though, I might have to get going too.
All right.
It's been about 3 hours. Been on.
Yeah, it's been about 3 hours. I was thinking about winding it down, anyways.
Sunday,
I should have said something before Wired left. That would have been nice.
I'm also on the same page. I'm probably gonna have to head out here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you guys want to shout yourselves out?
Yeah. So I stream. I do philosophy, politics, news, and play games on twitch.tv/BrentoBox. If you guys want to come by, talk about anything, let me know. And that's it. So thanks for having me on, Synth. It was fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed having you on, dude.
Yeah,
it was good.
Micro,
Yeah,
good
always fun
seeing you,
talking
man.
to you.
Yeah, Fusion, good meeting you.
You too.
Yeah. All right, guys. I'm gonna dip out. So see you, chat, and thanks, guys. Have a good Sunday. Have a good week.
See you, dude.
Bye, buddy.
Later.
Good talking to you.
See ya.
Woo. And then there were 3.
I guess I'll take the reins because I'm about to head out too. I kind of introduced myself earlier, but I'm sure that there's different people here. I go by MicroMacro TX on Twitch, twitch.tv/MicroMacro TX, because I'm from Texas and unoriginal. I like to do left-wing politics. I like to make fun of stupid people that generally are pretty far right-wing, and I like to engage with chat and have a good time. I was pretty quiet here, but I like to talk a lot and do some high-energy streams too. It's a lot of fun. So hope to see you all there sometime. And this was great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on Wired. I'm fucking.
Yeah, thanks, Wired.
My brain. My brain went wired, and my head, or my brain went micro. My face went wired. I don't know.
I am far more attractive than Wired. All right.
See, you know what? That's true. I would become a home wrecker for you. But you know,
thank you.
that apart. Yeah, good talking to you, dude. Good having you on.
Take it easy, y'all.
I did.
See you, buddy. Oh. Whoa. Okay. So it's just us. We're at least ending the podcast segment.
Okay.
So that was a pretty good time.
For a scuffed
I enjoyed
podcast?
everyone who came on.
That was pretty
Yeah,
good.
for a scuff podcast, that was pretty fucking good. For like a last minute, literally got together yesterday podcast. Yeah, that went pretty well.
At least you went
I
through
enjoyed
2
everyone we
topics.
had on.
It was great.
Yeah, I enjoyed everyone we had on. I was glad AhRelevant stopped by. WiredMicro. Fucking everyone. Simon.
Rem's next.
Brento. Yeah. Everyone. It was that was a fun time. So follow all those guys. I'm a bad host because I don't have a Nightbot set up to shout them out. But I will be giving all of those links into the chat shortly.
I'm helping.
Alright. I got Wired.
I got Brento.
And
MicroMacro.
I'll go. So I'll get AhRelevant.
Make sure you know how to spell that, because it's like relevant.
Yeah.
We had 5, right?
And
Am I going insane?
we
Brento,
had you
Macro.
too.
I mean, I guess. Follow me, I guess. I mean, I stream sometimes, so fuck it.
Yeah, there's everyone. So follow everyone. This is my awesome mod. He's my.
I do
guy,
YouTube content now. If it doesn't get striked down.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, so it's kind of it for the podcast. If you want to ask any questions, I'll probably be here for like another 15-20 minutes. But that's about it. Yeah.
Bye,
Thanks for showing up,
podcast.
everybody.